All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Planning Commission for March 28, 2022. We are going to get started. The first thing we're going to do is do a roll call.
Okay. What is the new guy's name?
Roll call.
Trying to find the new guys' names.
Just call me Hey You.
And what's the other one's last name?
Egner.
Sorry about that. I thought I was prepared. Andrew Yeager,
Here.
Lynn McGann here, Chad Engelke,
Here.
Angie Little,
Here.
Jimmy Stokes, here. Janice Vidal,
Here.
Bill Mercer,
Here.
and Bill Egner. Here. Thank you.
All right. Now if everyone will stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to read over the previous minutes and looking for a motion for approval.
I'll make the motion to stand.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Mercer. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Commissioner Little. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes, yes. Commissioner Vidal,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner Egner.
All right, old business, case number 2062, request from Julia Wooten for conditional use for an outdoor auto showroom land use at 1909 Tappan Drive. All right, Director Barr, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners and public in attendance, and those watching from home or wherever on YouTube. Yeah, on this particular case, if you'll notice, it's been on the agenda for quite some time, I think dating back to November. So I've had a discussion in the last few weeks with the applicant, and they said they were going to try one more time, and I basically give them one more time because I don't feel that we can kick it down the calendar forever. And you'll notice I didn't actually, in this month's packet, include the material that I had in past months about the particular case. So the applicant understands that they'll be given one more chance, basically for the month of April, to meet the agenda or not, or present their case. It didn't sound very good from when I spoke to the applicant, but they are aware of that. So I guess I would ask for just one more tabling of the case until next month, and we'll see what happens.
All right, do we have a motion to table?
A motion to table.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Egner,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes,
Yes.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner Yeager.
Yes.
All right, on to new business. Going to case number 2077, a request for final plat of a minor subdivision named Linda Square, at this time to be located at 2036 Goodman Road West in Horn Lake, by Metro Construction Developer, Ms. Moore and American Properties LLC, landowner, ETI Corporation, Melissa Aguilera, Engineering Company on land that is zone C4 consisting of approximately 1.10 acres plus or minus. I'm going to turn this over to Director Barr.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I won't reread that slide there because that's basically what you just read there from the agenda. So go to next slide. This slide here is just kind of a placeholder slide, if you will. It defines the title and purpose from the subdivision regulations for why we have plats and why we have like final plats and whether they be a minor subdivision or a major subdivision. In this case, it's a minor subdivision, but this is the final plat stage. It came before the Planning Commission at a previous date in which you approved that, and so they're back with the final plat at this stage, at this time. Next slide, please. So there's another placeholder slide that explains, and you'll see there, it was, you took this up during the January 31st Planning Commission meeting. So they're back with the final plat, because before what you saw was the sketch plat. It was kind of a conceptual idea of what they're wanting to do at the same location. Next slide. So from here, this particular slide shows the layout, which is defined, the one lot subdivision plat outlined in the blue box. And as I stated, it's one lot. It is located in the 100-year floodplain, and the applicant is aware of that, and they do know that they will have to be elevating the structure when they get to the construction phase of the project. No new road is proposed from the subdivision or for the subdivision, since it's fronted there on the bottom end of the slide there, which is Goodman Road West. The water is provided by Horn Lake Water Association, sewer as well, and as stated earlier, the zoning is C4. It's planned for a daycare center, and you'll see on this particular slide over on the right-hand side of the one lot subdivision, that yellow area that's proposed for an ingress egress easement to the property north of the subject property. So if it would ever develop to the north, that would provide an access spot from a vehicular standpoint to access that. Next slide, please. So what I try to do with all these PowerPoint presentations is I try to go through the regulations that are applicable and then put the things that are either that need clarification or something that's just deficient by just doing a strict analysis of whatever the applicable regulation would be. In this case, it's the subdivision regulations, not necessarily the zoning. So from the subdivision regulations, we get here Article 3, which deals with subdivision design standards, Section 3461, which is public sites, facilities, and open space. And so there's just a wording in there that with subdivisions that are proposed, if there's no open space or that's proposed, that you can require basically a fee in lieu of that. In this case, it would be just for one lot, and that's the fee that's listed there. I believe it's $300. So in this particular case, staff would recommend not having the applicant or owner pay the fee in lieu of providing open space, since it's a small subdivision. And since it's planned for a daycare center, as required through the zoning, there's a required recreational spot for the children to play in, and they are providing that. You can see that from the plat in the back. It'd be behind the main structure on the north side. So next slide, please. This is also from Article 3. This is more specifically Section 34-62. This has to do with general suitability. I call this is kind of like the pseudo planning or zoning essence that's found in the subdivision regulations. It's kind of like a double check, if you will. It wants to make sure that even though it's gone through a process to have whatever zoning the subject property would have, that it's like a double check to make sure that, okay, well, does it really fit as far as what's trying to be platted and developed? Does it fit kind of with the general development pattern of the area? And so what we see is it's proposed as a commercial plat in an area that has contiguous commercial zoning along the north side of Goodman Road West. And some of the properties along there have been platted, some have not. This would be obviously a good chance to get this platted and then develop as a daycare center, which according to the applicant there's almost an acute need within the community for an expansion of that particular land use. Next slide, please. This is just more wording here on the general suitability of a particular plat. One of these days, I'm going to get the right font size so everybody can see it. So I keep playing with different fonts or whatever, trying not to make the presentations too long, but still you can read them. Oh, this is where it's just stating that it's in the flood hazard area, the 100-year floodplain. Applicant is aware of that, and they know that they'll have to elevate the lowest habitable floor of the structure 2 foot above the BFE standing for the base flood elevation. So that's a positive feature that they would be doing that, and required. Next slide, please. This deals with Article 4, Section 34-89, which deals with minimum standards. This is lowercase letter e, which deals with sidewalks. And it's a requirement of the subdivision regulations that sidewalks be provided along, for in this case, Goodman Road is considered a major street, would be both sides. And so on looking at the plat, there was no designated sidewalk seen there. So this would be seen as a requirement or of approval as a condition that they would add the sidewalk or noting of the sidewalk in a note form or in pictorial form on the plat itself. Going on to 2H there, which has to do with streetlights and traffic signs. Those are required in accordance with design specifications of either an engineer or a utility company. This would be, let's see, we would ask when the applicant comes forward if they could clarify if they have any needs or anything that's been specified through MDOT of them for a street light. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this also is Article 4, Section 34-89. It's continuation of minimum standards. This has to do with the letter, lowercase letter K, which is erosion and sediment control. And so there's several items there. I won't enumerate them or read them all or whatever, but there's some specificity. And so we would ask, staff would ask that the applicant would place a note on the plat to the effect that erosion and sediment control best management practices will be used during the construction of the plat and parcel. Next slide, please. So staff recommendation is recommend approval of the requested subdivision final plat known as Linda Square. It's a 1-lot, 1.1 acre area for commercial development of a daycare center, specifically at 2036 Goodman Road West, with the following conditions or changes attached. A, the applicant / owner / developer shall show sidewalk upon the plat or make a note of its required construction in the plat notes. B, applicant / owner / developer shall clarify for staff the need to install a street light per MDOT or city engineering. And lastly, C, state on the plat a note to the effect that erosion and sediment control best management practices will be used during the construction of the plat and parcel. That would conclude the presentation unless you have any questions.
All right, does any of the commissioners have any questions for Director Barr?
I have one question I'd like to know. The land's gonna have to be raised anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 feet. Where you gonna get the dirt from?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Aguilera. I'm a civil engineer with ETI, and I'm the engineer for the owner of this project. As of right now, the site will be raised approximately 2 feet, but the rest of the rise will be, the building is going to actually be placed on 3-foot risers to get the right finished floor elevation that it needs.
Okay. So where's the dirt? Are you gonna dig it out the back, make a water drain or something? Is that where the dirt's coming from?
Well, we try to balance the site the best we can, and if the contractor will get dirt from a separate location if necessary, but the most gain is going to be from the risers underneath the building to get the right elevation. So it's not as much fill as you may think.
I'm not familiar with the risers, so I'll have to check that out.
Okay.
Wait, go ahead, Commissioner Regner.
So if the entire elevation of the lot is not brought above the floodplain, the actual foundation of the building will be above the floodplain on the risers.
Correct. The whole site doesn't need to be above the base flood elevation,
Okay.
just the finished floor.
Okay,
But we did raise the site up where the parking lot is at least at the same elevation as what Goodman Road is existing.
so if you get some excess water in there, the parking lot would not flood?
It's rise enough so everything is draining toward the north to the back of the lot where there's a detention pond.
Would the playground flood?
The detention is going behind the playground. It's all set.
You have any idea what the elevation of the playground would be? Would it be the same elevation as Goodman Road?
I don't have my grading plan in front of me, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But that is definitely something that would be reviewed during the site plan.
I mean, I
review
understand the
process.
kids probably wouldn't be going out to play if it's raining, but
We don't want to flood the kids.
a lot of times water doesn't actually run off immediately after it quits raining, or maybe even a couple of days after.
No, I do believe that the playground is at or above the elevation of the road in the parking lot.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, do we have any motions?
I have one request because of the application of having a sidewalk. It is a MDOT-owned highway, and there's not currently sidewalks along Goodman Road, along the highway, and didn't know if that was applicable for this situation.
Makes for a sticky question, really, because, I mean, we have it in the subdivision regulations, but obviously it's a state route, 302. I mean, it was funny that MDOT actually contacted the department on this particular plat. We sent out a lot more major stuff, but they actually contacted us, but they didn't bring up the issue of sidewalks at all, or whatever. I think it was more about the timing, because I guess they're supposed to be overlaying 302 sometime this year. I think it had more to do with that. So I don't really have an answer for that. I don't.
I reached out to MDOT, and they kind of said the same thing.
So,
Just not sure if that's really applicable for this, but if necessary, we can definitely add the sidewalk note.
No, I was gonna say, now I will say that down 302 in different areas that have businesses, they have been putting sidewalks as they build. That's what you see going down there, even in areas that don't have other sidewalks. When they put a new building, they usually put a new sidewalk in.
yeah, it's really a mixture, because I think of the Walmart Supercenter on the north side of Goodman Road. As you go farther to the west, there's a sidewalk there, but you see other locations along town, along the route, and there's large areas, there's no sidewalk whatsoever. So I don't know if that's a change or an adapted, MDOT policy over the years, or if it has to do with what they feel is less traffic in one area versus more traffic in one other area, vehicular traffic, or if they feel in some parts of town that it would be okay to have the sidewalk because it might have more pedestrian demand, like at the Walmart, So it's really haphazard as far as when I look at it and I drive up and down through town or whatever, and some places do and some places don't. And to explain why all that is, it's really hard to assemble that puzzle, and to explain all those idiosyncrasies and why some do and some don't. To be a contemporary modern city from a planning standpoint, it's nice to have sidewalks because people can get around. And when I travel through the town, I see a lot of people in different parts of town walking in ditches and on grass and in mud and stuff like that. So it's nice to have it if you can put it there. I guess I would leave the condition on there unless there'd be something specific from MDOT that says no, don't, or whatever. I guess that's how I would kind of tend to lean at this point.
Well, I can give you a little bit of information on why there are none up and down Goodman Road. I've been here about 34 years. When I moved here, Goodman Road was a 2-lane road. They came in with this huge highway coming through, and the sidewalks weren't there anyway, so they didn't make people put sidewalks in. But going forward, I feel like we need to put sidewalks in, because I've been in the position where I've had to walk up and down Goodman before, and it's kind of scary out there with no sidewalks. There's a lot of traffic.
I walked up and down Goodman Road all the way to the interstate to from where I live. And there's about 5 different places that there are no buildings in, it's just vacant land. Then there's no sidewalk there. But the next space that you get into, there's a service building there. It's got sidewalks. Some of them are brand new, some of them are cracked, and some of them what. But don't you think you would be setting a precedent if you started now saying that you didn't have to have a sidewalk for new business on Goodman Road or any place there is a business?
Potentially. We were doing in the department today, we were trying on this, and then another case later coming up, we were trying to do some research on the ADA. I mean, does the ADA state that for new development, sidewalks have to be built? But it seems to be more if a site is developed and they're putting in sidewalks, then they have to be built to ADA specifications. It seems to be more along that, but I'm not an expert in that as far as the requirement of ADA. It's a very lengthy bill. Legislation-wise, so I know that's no answer, but
Across the street at that, there's a business facility right across the street. Do they have sidewalks too? It's a dentist, I think it's a dental chiropractor.
Yeah, where the train station, right
Yes.
there. Yes, there's sidewalks there, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
The sidewalks goes all the way down to the bridge, and it stops for a little ways, and picks up again and goes past Walmart. Then where Walmart, the old grocery store is, from there almost into Goodman, 51 Highway, there's not any sidewalks. But those buildings were built a long time ago. And I think you would be setting a precedence if you didn't have a building, if you got a building coming in, it requires, and it's on a city street, it requires a sidewalk.
Yeah.
That's my
It's
feeling.
also state-owned right-of-way.
Pardon?
So it's a state-owned right-of-way, so whether MDOT approves for the wants the improvement.
Are you saying
Which
the
I don't see
sidewalks
they-
are state-owned or right-of-way?
It would be within the right-of-way, and it would be a state-owned right-of-way. MDOT owns the road and the right-of-way, and this sidewalk would be within the right-of-way, and I don't see how they would be objected to it, but I think it would be whether they enforce it.
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about, but I'll look it up and find out.
What she's saying is that Highway 302 is a state-owned highway, and that and that it'd have to have MDOT approval for sidewalks, which I don't think they would. I don't think that based on everything else they've done, I don't think they'd have a problem with that.
I don't think you'll get it turned down.
Any other questions for the applicant?
That's it.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. After review of the application, case number 2077, a request for the subdivision final plat of the one lot, 1.10 acres, area named Linda Square, for the commercial development of a daycare center at 2036 Goodman Road West, with the following conditions stated, which would be A through C, and we don't have C on here, but A through C from staff recommendations.
And C is the lights, is that what you're talking about?
The C was the lights.
Okay.
Yes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Who seconded it?
I did.
Andrew did. Any other discussion? All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal,
Yes.
and Commissioner Egner.
Yes.
That's been approved. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, next case, case number 2071, a request to amend the planned unit development named Sage Creek for 3 properties located at 5070 Goodman Road West, and PFMT Holdings LLC, landowner and developer, and WH Porter Consultants PLLC, planning site design, engineer, for land zoned as PUD consisting of 148.27 acres plus minus for 278 single-family homes of various lots of various sizes and 71.86 plus or minus acres of common open space. I will again turn this over to Director Barr.
Thank you. Normally when I do the PowerPoint presentations, I like to keep them in, you know, the 12 to 16 slide realm if it's possible. It's not always possible depending on the nature of the situation and the complexity. This is one of the examples where it goes beyond that, so we're just gonna have to grind through 33 slides here. So, but I felt that those are all applicable as far as the wording from the zoning regulations, which we have a lot of wording about PUDs in the zoning regulations. I won't reiterate what he's already read there, so next slide, please. So what I tried to do here is break, to help hopefully everybody follow it a little bit better, basically break it into like 4 sections. And so what we have through the zoning ordinance, we have the actual project description, the history. We have planned unit development regulation standards, which are some things that are specific to the PUDs. Because this basically is, as we read, it's basically amending a previously approved PUD, which was approved last year. And then the B here is, C is the master development plan approval process. There's a process, there's steps involved with that. And the D, which would be the conditions, and I've also added some things based upon economics in there as well. So to start off, letter A, the description. It was most recently approved, and it was approved for 328 lots by the city, and that was done in September of last year. That was by the Board of Aldermen. It was subsequently discovered afterwards by the developer that part of the area that they were wanting to develop was in the designated federal wetlands, and so that can't be disturbed. And so they've come back basically before you with an amended PUD, and instead of the 328 lots, there's 278. And so what they did is they've shrunk some of the lots down in size, and they've also cut out about 50 lots overall in the development proposal. As stated earlier, there's 3 parcels involved. When you add them together, it's about 148 acres in size. Parcels are mostly covered by trees in a forest-like manner with elevation undulating from 295 feet in elevation to as low as about 250 feet with several elevation changes spread over the subject parcels. Next slide, please. Number 6 here, there are at least 2 small creeks draining the parcels. 7, there's a wide cleared area in the southern portion of the area for a utility easement that appears to be about 120 feet in width. I think it might be done by like Texas Electricity or Texas Energy or something like that, but I'm not positive of that. Number 8, there's also an existing dirt gravel road off of Goodman Road West in the south central portion of the area, and then a few drive paths or lanes scattered throughout the parcels. These are all private currently. Lot sizes range from 7,500 square feet up to 24,200 square feet. Number 10, the minimum house size, what is proposed is a minimum of 1,800 square feet, exclusive of porches and garages. All homes are proposed with double car garages. Number 11, the development timeline, it's to be built out in 5 phases, one each year from 2022 to 2024. Number 12, though portions of the parcels are designated as federal wetlands, none of the subject properties are located in the designated 100-year floodplain. Number 13, the electrical service is from Entergy Mississippi Incorporated. 14, gas service would be Atmos Energy Corporation. Next slide. 15, public water service would be Walls Water Association. 16, sanitary sewer service is by the city of Horn Lake. Number 17, elementary schools. The western 2/3 of the area involved is located within the Walls Elementary School area, and the eastern 1/3 of the area is located within the Shadow Oaks Elementary School area. And number 18, excuse me, the high schools. The western 2/3 of the area involved is located within the Lake Cormorant High School area, and the eastern 1/3 of the area is located within the Horn Lake High School area. Next slide. So here we see the subject property highlighted with the blue line there. Sometimes I call it like, it looks like a pseudo Utah, state of Utah kind of for shape. You see Goodman Road there on its south side. Next slide, please. On this slide, we see it's kind of like a site analysis. It's kind of hard to pick up on some of the detail, but it's showing basically some contours, existing bodies of water, wetlands area, the tree stands, that sort of thing. Those hatched, excuse me, on this particular slide, the hatched lines in orange there, those are like the ridge lines for the high point of some elevation. And that this particular slide, the north part is looking to the right, so it's turned on its edge, so it's able to fit in there with a little bit of size, so it's turned on its side. Next slide, please. The same orientation on this particular slide, but this shows the conceptual development plan of the 278 lots, the bodies of water, and then also the internal trail system that is planned. Next slide. So this one actually points out the pedestrian circulation plan, which is the solid black line, and you can kind of see that in the lower areas in different parts of the development. Next slide. So this starts section B, if you will, of how it's kind of divided out, and this is from the PUD standards, from the zoning ordinance. And so it says here, I'm going to read some of this today because it's not every day we see PUD amendments. It says the primary purpose of a PUD is to provide maximum design flexibility. It is not, however, the intent of the regulations to usurp the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan as they relate to the physical development of the city. Accordingly, in accordance with the land use plan action strategies, which refers a person to chapter 6 of the comprehensive plan elements pertaining to PUDs, the PUD district may be established within any land use classification as provided on the land use plan, which dates back to 2003, with the exception of the following: public, estate residential, and low density residential. And so overall, what's proposed is a density of 1.87 dwelling units per acre. And so the analysis of that is that the city's zoning ordinance defines low-density residential district as ranging from a density of 1.5 to 2.9 dwelling units per acre. So this proposal within this range would actually meet the definition of low density. So therefore, it actually probably shouldn't be proposed at all as a PUD. That's what the whole purpose of this slide is. But staff would still be supportive of the design and the proposal, mainly because of some of the conservation and open space features that have been added to it. Some of this is because of the wetlands, and so when you take out that area, it by definition lowers the density. So it makes it a lower density than it was before when the city looked at it last year. Next slide. So this lists, excuse me, this lists general requirements from the zoning ordinance. So what it does is it lists several things from the zoning ordinance that the planning commission and then ultimately the alderman would consider when you view the proposal. So number one here is the proposed development would not unduly injure or damage the use, value, and enjoyment of surrounding property, or unduly hinder or prevent the development of surrounding properties in accordance with the city's current development policies and comprehensive plan. Two, the approved water supply, wastewater treatment and disposal, and stormwater drainage facilities that are adequate to serve the proposed development have been or shall be provided. Three, the location and arrangement of the structures, parking areas, walks, lighting, and other service facilities shall be compatible with the surrounding land uses in any part of the proposed planned development not used for structures, parking, and loading areas or access ways shall be landscaped or otherwise improved except where natural features are such as to justify preservation. Number four, any modification of the city's applicable zoning ordinance and or subdivision regulation standards that would otherwise be applicable to the development site are warranted by the design of the master development plan and the amenities incorporated therein and are not inconsistent with the public interest nor the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So what's proposed is the 278 single-family lots with no commercial element. That was, I believe, something in previous versions, that there was an actual commercial portion of the PUD. That's been dropped out entirely with this version. And nearly half of the development being proposed is common open space. Different amenities are planned for in the development, including trails, shelters, benches, and playgrounds, architectural elements, including fencing, and certain aspects of the houses themselves. So in staff's analysis, it appears the development would add value to the area and the city. The proportionally large open space is truly unique and advantageous because it does not disturb the federally designated wetlands. That means basically, undisturbed land will stay in that category, undisturbed. So we see that as a very positive thing. It's not very often that you would come across the development that would have basically 50% designated as open space. Adequate public water and wastewater services are planned for with this development. Next slide. To help support the plan, or portions of the plan, with the nature trail that's planned and leaving large areas natural, as I stated earlier, will help blend the development into the natural environment. In, in a different Part 5 of the comprehensive plan, it talks about goals and objectives. On page 11, for residential land use states, residential neighborhoods should be linked together not only by streets but also through the use of open space and greenbelt trails. With the street system proposed, it's to connect to phase 3 of the Willow Point and Holly Ridge subdivisions, and an internal trail system that with the design meets this part of the plan very well. So it appears to be consistent with the public interest in the city's comprehensive plan. Next slide. So now we go into C, which talks about more specific, the master development plan as laid out by the developer. And so regarding PUDs, we have language in the zoning ordinance about that, and it talks about a master development plan process. So that's basically why it's before you. I mean, they're amending it in this case, and so there's wording in there, and so that's why it's before you. This could be kind of like a placeholder slide like we've seen in some other cases. Number 2 from Article 5, letter O, 10C. When we get an application, master development plan, and accompanying staff report, the Planning Commission and governing authority shall consider the potential impacts of the proposed planned unit development upon, and it lists those things there: adjacent land use, transportation infrastructure, public utility facilities, comprehensive plan, and such other matters pertaining to the public health, safety, and welfare of the city. So we'll go through each of those here in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So the adjacent land uses to the north, there are larger rural estate type parcels with a few homes upon them. To the east and northeast and east of the subject parcels is forested natural land. South, again, a few larger rural estate type parcels with a few homes and a large range-like parcel. And then to the west, there's a mixture of existing small manufactured home park, and then 2 subdivisions with single-family homes being developed, specifically Willow Point Phase 3 and then the Holly Ridge subdivision. Next slide. So on the transportation infrastructure, as proposed, the development will be served by a system of paved roads, proposed to have 50 feet of road right-of-way and 31 feet of width between curb backs. This has been checked with the fire department. They're insisting that any new roads in town be at least 30 feet of wide pavement area. So 31 feet would meet or exceed that very slightly. The development's main entrance point will be off of Goodman Road West, which in this location of Horn Lake is paved and consists of 5 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes westbound, 2 lanes eastbound, and 1 center turning lane. The development is proposed to connect to the Willow Point Phase 3 subdivision and Holly Ridge, which are located west of the proposed development. This is an excellent example or opportunity for connectivity reasons. Because basically what's proposed in the development, there would be 3 like road stub outs to theoretically connect to developments located to the north, northeast, and also east of the development. Next slide. Going on to public utility facilities, as we mentioned before, it's proposed to be connected with a full range of public utilities. There are as follows: Walls Water for water, Entergy for electricity, natural gases via Atmos Energy, and sanitary sewer, ultimately, well, Horn Lake, and then ultimately the city of Memphis. Telephone service will be provided by Bell South. Internet will be provided by Xfinity and AT&T at some different speeds there, and all that will be underground. Next slide. So now the comprehensive plan actually drills down into more specificity. If it's hard to imagine that, but it is, and that's okay. So we're going to continue on here. So some of this has been provided earlier in the staff report, more is provided here. And so it goes into a series. What I tried to do is look in the comprehensive plan to find that were relevant objectives to the proposed development and bring those out to light and see how they fit or not. So we've got objective number 4. This is accommodate a range of housing choices, including types and processes balanced and in harmony with existing residential neighborhoods. Staff analysis: the city approved in December of last year the subdivision plat for Baker's Estates, which is located northwest of this development area, beyond Holly Ridge. The smallest lots in that development of 83 lots were 20,000 square feet, with many towards an acre or more, but also for single-family development. So basically, it's saying that the homes would be larger at 2,000 square feet. With this development, where 78% of the lots would be between 7,500 square feet and 11,000 square feet, this gives the city some market flexibility as far as what's being offered to buyers of new homes within the city. Next slide, please. So this deals with objective 7, which is on pages from 8 to 11 of the plan in that particular section. I'm going to switch to my paper version because that's getting too small. Okay, so objective 7 from page 8, it says restrict higher density residential and multifamily development to approved planned unit developments. As touched on before, the PUDs envisioned by the plan and the zoning ordinance for residential developments are for higher densities than what is proposed. One must remember, though, that because of the open space element that is proposed here of 49% of the entire size of the development, this lowers the density by a fair margin. It's not very often. I've never seen actually a development where it proposes 50% of the development or thereabouts into open space. So in this case, when you apply that, it lowers the density. Okay, next slide. So this is also an objective 7, but this is page from 11, and then objective 8, which is also page 11 in the comprehensive plan. I'll read objective 7 first. Generally, the city should encourage compact residential development patterns that provide for the preservation of open space that is interconnected within a network of like-kind development. Objective 8, residential neighborhoods should be linked together not only by streets, but also through the use of open space and greenbelt trails. And so the development seems to meet objective number 7 very well. And then, of course, it uses the phrase compact residential development. Staff sees that as a relative one to a certain degree. The zoning ordinance does provide some specificity. But the development absolutely provides for the development of open space and will be connected with other city subdivisions. Even be better if the trail system interconnected with other developments. There is the DeSoto County Greenway and Bike Master Plan from May of 2005. It lists a network of some existing and some planned or anticipated for trails and trailheads through the county. The nearest proposed major trail to this development would be at least 1.5 miles northeast of this development, with the 2-lane Trace primary trail, and the nearest trailhead would be about 2.5 miles also northeast of the development, with the Dancy Park trailhead. Waste to have an east side development trail connection should be considered by the developer. Did not see one proposed. Next slide. Continuing on in the comprehensive plan, this is now objective number 11, but this is from page 12. It says discourage urban development that is disconnected from readily available urban services. So as we stated earlier, the development will be connected to the full system of urban services. Objective 14, which is also from page 12, resolve to require that all new residential development proposals provide for sanitary sewer connections to approved centralized and or decentralized wastewater systems, and the development will be connected to a public sanitary sewer system. Next page, or next slide, thank you. This is objective number 4, which is from page 14, which says assist neighborhood associations in their efforts to improve their neighborhoods. The subject of neighborhood associations is brought up here because the planning staff has been approached on at least 3 occasions over the past few months of areas designated as common or open space in previously recorded subdivisions that for whatever reason have come into ownership of single private landowners, asking the question of whether these common space areas could be developed for continued residential development. Professionally speaking, this is a disturbing trend that it's noticed. So in this case, planning staff urges the developer to take great care and diligence in creating the private covenants and restrictions and the system by which the homeowners association can perpetually provide for a designated common and open space features. This is work in the creation of those covenants and restrictions themselves, but also in the funding, taxation, and proper recording and governance locally by the property owners of the development. So we'll see this later in the staff's recommendation as one of the conditions. Next slide, please. And then another part of the plan, it says number 5 here, such other matters pertaining to the public health, safety, and welfare as proposed, and I stated earlier, 31 feet of pavement width for all internal public roads, and that's been a positive comment from the fire department. An additional comment, this is from Police Chief Troy Ruel, made back on February the 9th. He recommends the posting of road speed limit signs of 20 miles an hour to be posted throughout the subdivision. But he also adds that the development will increase call volume for an already stretched thin police department. Next slide, please. So this breaks in the presentation, if you will, into section D, which has to do with conditions and economics. As I stated earlier, the most recent Sage Creek approval was in September of last year, and it contained the following conditions. That 50% of the development would be Meridian home designs with a carriage side load garages, and then approximately 50% would be by D.R. Horton home designs, consistent in designs contained in there was a handout that was made back in September of last year, and it talked about a particular design of the house. All homes shall have be 100% masonry and or James Hardy fiber cement siding. D, the development shall contain a 50-foot stream buffer, and then E, any other recommendations or conditions as set forth by the Planning Commission back then or planning staff. Next slide, please. So the developer has shared with planning staff that because they lost 50 lots from the proposal of last year, that this is adding a price of about $17,000 per lot. And then also the lots are smaller. So there's 2 things going on. People would be paying more per lot, and then the lots would be smaller in size. That's not even including the inflationary headwinds of materials and labors that we're all experiencing. They've also shared that the current 1,800 square foot minimum build size would result in a starting opening price of $375,000. They believe the initial price comparative for buyers at this starting point, price point would be difficult. If it's nearly impossible to find for this part of Horn Lake a comparative for a loan, Thus, the fear here is that perhaps the development would never get started because the initial person couldn't find a loan, get a loan approval, because there would be lack of a comparative. So based upon this, they've indicated an initial starting percentage of so many builds starting at a 1,500 square foot size. We would, as planning department, we would suggest a 25% requirement of all builds be built under 1,800 square feet, as small as 1,500 square feet. Obviously, that's subject for debate and discussion. Next slide, please. We're almost to the end. You're doing really good. Page 22 in the Sage Creek development booklet that had some pictures of the proposed elevations and some of the models, floor plans that they're seeking to build. I think the developer was going to bring maybe some latest renditions of those tonight, so you might ask for input there. The city does have design standards, and they do apply to residential builds as well, and so I've listed those, because most of the time what you see is in our site plan design reviews, you see commercial buildings come before you, or commercial or industrial, but we do also have design standards for single-family residential zoning districts. So the first one on that is I-1, Architectural Compatibility. So it wants to ensure architectural compatibility with homes within the immediate vicinity of the building site. And so it breaks it down further. Letter A, the immediate vicinity shall include an area with the same zoning district and a 500-foot radius of the building site. B, the building design shall conform to the prevailing patterns and materials within the immediate vicinity. And the following items shall be used to determine compatibility. Next slide, please. So what I did is I brought this slide back into play, and you'll see like zoning on basically one parcel surrounding or adjacent to the development, and that's to the west for the Willow Point subdivision phase 3. It also has the PUD type zoning, so it's got the same type of zoning as what we're dealing with here. Next slide, please. So continuing on architectural compatibility, it breaks it down. You may have seen some of these things before, where it talks about roof pitch, roofing materials, exterior finishes and materials, garage orientation, landscaping, color scheme, mailbox design, and so forth. Next slide, please. And then we have under I-2, there's general design characteristics. Parking on site should be visibly subordinate to the residential character of the street. B, garage, carports, outbuildings, etc. should not be street forward and of materials and styles that blend with existing structures and the neighborhood. C, maintain the average scale of 1 to 2 story buildings along the street, which is proposed. They're all proposing either a 1-story or a 2-story build. No 3 stories here. As far as what's proposed. D, maintain the similarity of building heights. The apparent height of the primary facade should not exceed 35 feet. And E, use roof forms that are similar in scale and character to the neighborhood and those used historically. Next slide, please. So staff analysis of all that. The adjacent and nearest development within with PUD zoning is the Willow Point addition, as I just mentioned. That's located west of the subject properties. Phase 2 of that addition is mostly built out, and Phase 3 was approved also in September of last year by the alderman. Its approval did not contain any specific design conditions about the housing builds. I thought that was interesting. No specific conditions on that particular PUD for Phase 3. Next slide, please. So number 2 here, from looking at page 22 from the booklet, it appears that only the design from the upper right-hand corner of that page is what staff would consider too garage forward to meet 2B of the single-family residential design standard. And then 3, both from a personal experience and professional viewpoint, I don't really have an issue with the fiber cement siding as a siding material. Brick is wonderful for lots of different reasons, aesthetically and durability. But also the fiber cement board is durable and, at least in my opinion, decent as well. And some of that is proposed with some of the designs. Next slide. Then I'll promise I'll quit talking. So this is staff recommendation, recommends approval of the proposed amendments to the existing PUD, planned unit development known as Sage Creek, with the tentative address unassigned. This just is a number, kind of gives placement on that existing gravel road there of 5070 Goodman Road West for a 278 single-family lot residential development consisting of 148.27 acres, with 71.86 acres of that proposed as common open space on land that is zoned PUD with the following conditions or changes attached. Letter A, the applicant/developer/owner shall proceed in the development process by subdividing the development according to the phasing as prescribed within the master development plan and the city's subdivision regulations per chapter 34 of the Horn Lake City Code. B, developer owner shall post 20 mile/hour speed limit signs within the development along its public roads. And C, applicant developer owner shall properly create and record the covenants and restrictions to govern the development in perpetuity. That would conclude that.
Thank you, Director Barr. Do we have any questions from the commission to Director Barr? All right, do we have the applicant here? Y'all could come forward.
Oh, sure.
How y'all doing? Henry Porter with WH Porter. So, not to really repeat too much of what Chad just said, but basically the reason why we're here is because of environmental issues. When we first created this plan, it was based on an environmental assessment that we had done, and that was based on old core criteria on how they actually took jurisdiction of streams and wetlands. And after we got all this stuff approved, that all completely changed. There was ultimately ended up being a lawsuit in Arizona that basically kind of turned everything upside down. So stuff that they weren't taking jurisdiction of, they're taking now. So basically we had to recreate this whole thing according to that. It ultimately resulted in a lot more common open space than we had before. I think it's much more, I guess, natural subdivision development, and I think it'll actually be really pretty once it's done because it'll kind of hide all these different parts of the development from each other. I guess, I think the condition-wise, I think we're in complete agreement with those conditions. If y'all have any other concerns, that you want to ask, I'll be more than willing to answer those.
Yes, Commissioner Egner.
Tell me a little bit about setting up this homeowners association in perpetuity.
So I can't really speak too much on that one, but they use, I'm trying to remember what the fellow's name is, attorney in Germantown that they use that. He sets these things up everywhere. And remember that guy's name? Keith Collins.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he's very well known in this, and he'd be the one that set it up, and I think he does the best he possibly can with protecting y'all and the HOA.
Do you know how he operates in any way? For instance, the homeowners decide they don't want to have anything to do with it. He runs the association, or he runs the association from the get-go right on through. Do you have any idea how that works?
I don't. So that's a little beginning. I'm an engineer, so that's a little outside my knowledge. But, I think, as you're saying, like if they quit paying, then, I don't think any HOA is ever, foolproof.
That's where I was headed.
Yeah. No, I get that. Because, I've seen where they failed all over time because, you have the president that's embezzling money and stuff. And
Also, do you have any idea how much it's going to take to maintain these common areas? I know this is going in phases. It seems like the first phase is going to be, those homeowners are going to be carrying quite a load till those other phases start falling in and homes start being sold.
So it would be a group, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I guess you're actually right. You know, I was thinking about the different phases. So the first, I think as each phase is added in, it's going to be one master HOA for the whole area. So I guess ultimately the developer would still have a stake in the HOA until every house is basically sold. And they can give
Do you know what percentage of houses would have to be built before it would turn over to the homeowners or to the Keith Collins?
I think last time, I think they'd said 80 to 90%.
Okay. Okay.
We actually have on staff a person that writes
So may I ask another question? Maybe you would answer that, I don't know. You're going to turn this over to the homeowners at a certain point?
That's correct. The HOA, we can't maintain it forever.
And,
Once it's all sold.
and suppose none of the homeowners step up to say, I'll take it.
Well, when you buy, I guess they could, but they know when they buy a house and there's an HOA, and it starts that initial assessment, they sign up.
It's usually in the covenants.
Again,
You
this
usually
is
can't.
why Keith Collins.
Well, you got court.
Initially, they know they're in a homeowner's association. It's turned over to their board.
And the dues are collected through, he collects them separately from property tax or any other kind of tax?
I cannot tell you whether or not they're in their mortgage and about real estate taxes.
Yeah.
It's usually separate.
I know that it's worked successfully.
Usually separate.
And if it is separate and I just say I'm not paying, what happens?
Again, I don't know. That's why I don't manage. I try to let someone who manages these things all the time.
I think he's got the right to come in and put a lien on the property.
Most of them do. Most of them have a property lien. From my expertise on homeowners,
Okay.
homeowner association that I've had to do.
Okay, so the property lien doesn't actually generate any cash until the title's
it's,
transferred.
That's right.
So that could be 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, fair enough, yeah.
Just a question out of curiosity, are you abandoning the two-story houses? Because you said you were going to this option, there's no two-story option.
That was representation. I mean, I think it depends more on the market, you know. If the market calls for the 2 stories, I think they would come in with the 2 stories.
Yeah, so that was my question. So is this what you're proposing, or is it what's or is this what you're proposing? Which of the houses are you proposing for your development?
Is it gonna be all brick on this one? I think we're kind of still sticking with that first one.
This one?
Uh,
You talking about these here, or?
I think it's probably gonna be a mix of those two.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you that some of these designs, I know that that this doesn't, to me, doesn't fit the Horn Lake aesthetics that we done. But now these I could get behind, but these, I know some of these don't.
That's one that we like better, frankly.
So,
I completely agree with him, but like, for example, this two-story house right here with the brick, and that one's beautiful, but then you have these ones with the paneling. Hardly any houses in Horn Lake like that.
We would go with the brick.
Okay. I have a question. I noticed there's 5 phases. Are the sizes of the homes being built gonna be all 1,800 square feet or whatever in all 5 phases?
It would be, I mean, it'd definitely be a mix of the homes in there. You know, there's only so many 1,800 that they're gonna build within there, and that it would go up to, 24, whatever, square feet.
What's the
But-
minimum square footage that you plan to put in? 18?
I think the request was made for 15 as a minimum.
Minimum
But it would be
what?
only 25% would be 1,500 square feet. But it's kind of just that offering of just a mix of houses for owners.
I thought we had a debate or some argument about that square footage being too low.
Yeah, we discussed all that the first time. 1,800 was the one that we came up with, that everybody agreed on.
I think it changed that they left us.
They did?
Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
The houses with the garages that come out front, we're not doing those, right?
Just the paper copy you have. Don't look at that page anymore.
Okay,
Just that
okay.
paper copy we just gave you.
So you're not doing the two-story houses anymore?
Might be some. What we're saying is that style is gonna be
Yep.
more of the style.
This comes.
The garages would not be 725 feet in front of the house like that. There'll be no garage that sits that far out.
So is there anything in writing to determine what's the percentage of each house? Because I know y'all trying to get a variety price range for the customers. So is there a percentage of how much of this house versus this house versus this house? Or y'all can just pretty much do whatever you want?
Any other questions?
I know we talked last time about the homes having more of a frontage as far as like a porch or something. And every one on this one has like a garage, entryway, and then a that's inset, and then a window. Are we not doing the porches and the frontage of the houses anymore? It just looks more inviting. These are kind
Yeah.
of like run-of-the-mill everywhere in Horn Lake.
I'm sure, I think there is kind of an intention to have some porches on there. I can't tell you how many would be on there, but I think there would be that intention to have on it.
Okay.
May I say one other thing? It seems like every one of these houses, I mean, we can talk about the footage, but it seems like every one of these pictures indicate that the garage is forward.
I think it's minimal. I mean, I think that, we weren't trying to produce it or protrude it, kind of like what was in this book, where it was going to be, probably that 20 feet in front of it. But I think these were all just minimal. It was kind of trying to keep it, that face, as clean as possible.
But that kind of takes away from the aesthetics, though. That's, you've got the inset door to where, you walk around the corner of that garage and you don't know what's coming to meet you when it's like, protruding like that. So I think that's one of my main concerns is it just, the aesthetics of the whole thing is just not there as far as, the last time we talked, there were, and this is just an example, like down here on the bottom, you have almost a porch-like setting, and then you have the garage that's even with the building, with the house. To me, that looks much more inviting. I mean, it just looks more like what we're trying to bring Horn Lake to, instead of just like a cookie-cutter home that you see everywhere else now.
If we need a mix of that, I don't think there'd be an issue to include that in there.
Okay.
I mean, if y'all
I
just-
agree with that. I think we need more houses with the front door prominent, the garage less prominent. I know the issue of side load garages came up, and I don't really think you have the frontage for a side load garage. So I don't think we're gonna see any side loaded garages, so I think these garages need to be some feet behind the front door. And I don't know how you're gonna do that exactly, but I'm sure there's a way.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? All right, do we have a motion?
Can we continue this until we see the updated homes?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of that.
Could we table this until we could see the updated versions of the homes?
I thought this was supposed to be updated every time.
Sure, that's not what that was.
Right.
We tabled it last time, they didn't like it.
I was just about to say one.
Yeah, but I have concerns that it won't get done, so.
agreeable to that, I don't have any.
What, before
Could we
we,
not just,
Details of exactly what you would
could
like.
we not just include exactly what we want, instead of tabling it again and keep tabling it?
We did that last
And,
time.
you know,
Same thing we did last time,
so we
Yeah,
need.
same thing back.
We did that last
No, we
time.
did, and we still didn't get what we wanted.
and it's still,
Like we heard, nothing has passed through yet. We're here for you guys. You've already lost, and I don't get resonated with you. I'm not crying at all. But we've already lost 50% of our property to build on. And what we're trying to build is a project that preserves that property. Conserving that property, we're leaving it as natural wetland. Federal government has come in and said that. I would say, you guys maybe pass it with recommendations, but I would request from you so we can move forward. I own this property. I'm paying interest on this property every month. And I want to build something that's going to work. I don't want this to be the only service. But if it keeps getting tabled, and we have a hard time getting it on the agenda for tonight. We struggle. If you guys want something garage that's set back or whatever we
Well, I mean, here's the thing, I don't mean to cut you off, and here's the problem that I think the commissioners are having, based on, I mean, I haven't been through Sage Creek on every time that y'all been before us, this is my second time for it, and we're specifically wanting a certain design house, and every time we try to pass it and give y'all the benefit of the doubt, when it goes in front of the alderman, then it doesn't get played out the way, that we're hoping that it would, to allow them to look at the designs that we're wanting. So I think the commissioners, and if I'm wrong, y'all can agree, y'all can disagree, but y'all can let me know. But we're wanting specifically, what are y'all building in there, so what we can approve that. But when we ask, is this what you're building? You're saying, well, it'll be something like that. And it's so vague that we're wanting specifics on what are you building in the subdivision so we can approve that. But we have never got a specific on what you're building. It's been designs like this, but then we get like this is what I saw when I got this packet over the weekend. And we've already said that we don't want that, but it's in the packet. We've said that we don't want these designs, but they're in the packet. And then we're like, okay, what are you going to do about it? And they're like, well, we can probably do something like this, and we can probably do something like that. So the probablys, I think, is what the problem with the commission is having. We want more specifics on exactly what are you building in the subdivision, and we would love to approve those designs. But that's what we don't get that every time it comes before us. Do y'all have, I mean, because I know as a real estate agent, I have been with new homes, I've dealt with new homes. There are designs that y'all can have. I mean, I used to build off plans all the time at the builder that I built with. And they had, these are our floor plans, these are what we build in this subdivision, this is what we build in this subdivision, and you couldn't build one sometimes in the other. So I think that's what we're asking as a commission, is we want specific designs on what you're building in here so we know what we're getting when we approve something.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Is there a phrase or a description that describes what we're looking for? I want to call it a main entrance forward floor plan.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't want the garage forward on this house. I want the main entrance to be forward. Is there a description that capsulizes that idea? And if there is, what is it?
Yeah, no, I understand. I wrote that down.
Yeah, and I'm just concerned, these are more utilitarian looking. They're not attractive.
when I grew up, we called them shotgun houses.
Well, this is not a shotgun.
No,
It's just a little cute, been 20 years.
I mean, typically how you would, from what I know, I mean, typically the one way to design these would be a side load or a side load garage. Even though the garage is protruding, but the entrance, you don't see all garage, you see a house. Unfortunately, I know with these lots, with the size they are, they probably can't be side loaded design, because some of them are just too small.
That's right.
But there has to be another design where y'all can put the house more, at least more prominent in that, where that window and that porch and stuff are, where the main entrance is.
Where the garage is not the focus of the home.
And I would say that the one with the porch on it, that's in there, even if it was brick, would be more of what we want. And y'all could do different designs in that same fashion, but that would be more of what we're looking for, I would think. based on the conversations that we're having with the commission.
And you're talking about the one inside the package?
You one side of the
right?
package on the bottom right corner. If that was brick and everything like that, even though it just has a nice aesthetic look. Now, I know you can't build every house like that, because then everybody would have the same house. But there has to be a way to do multiple, elevations and then have other designs with multiple elevations that could do that.
I think we can do that. The bottom right.
Basically, this picture that you gave us, what is the typical price and size of this house?
So on here, they're ranging from 1,800, maybe a little bit, like probably 1,775, all the way up to, I think, 2,400 square feet, or all these on here.
All right, so what are you asking, basically, the selling price?
They're gonna range probably from 300 or 300,000 and up.
All right, are you familiar with Hernando?
Yeah.
All right, if you go between Hernando and Coldwater, there is a subdivision that they're building now, right at where the VFW runs into 51 Highway, all the way back there. Houses that are a lot bigger than this, selling for around $300,000 or above. That's what basically you got a piece of property over there that Elvis Presley used to own. And you got just something in the advertisement. You said Elvis Presley's farmer property or something like that. This will bring people to that. But when you put a house that's built like one that was close to the airport in 1980, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a $120,000 house. And you're going to charge $300,000 for it. Put a house in there that would make this town proud, and you proud of it after you sell it.
Usually
That's all I got to say.
Usually in a subdivision, there's like maybe 3 or 4 designs that they put. My question, so we can meet, we can meet somewhere, is what designs in this would we be okay with? If we could specify, like, so that we can move forward and not table it again. We state the design we want, if they're in the booklet, and let them go with those designs. Just
So,
For the
yeah,
large
yeah.
home, the
That's
middle
what I'm
home.
saying.
I do have a question. Do y'all have the elevations and the houses that y'all are wanting to build?
We do. We don't have them here, but we have them.
Is there a way, we're probably gonna have, they're wanting to continue this, some of them are, some of us are wanting to go, but I would really like to see those before, because that's really what we need to see.
Exactly what's going in. If you're doing 3 designs, we want to see the 3 designs. If they're in here, let us know so we can okay the designs.
Okay.
I didn't catch that, what was that?
Really what exactly is going in would be those, what we handed out tonight. But if y'all have issues with it, then we have to go back to the drawing board for that.
Okay.
If y'all want to see garages not flood, or see more porches, then, because that is what is being proposed for those paper copies.
Okay, so, that's the honesty that we need to see. So these are this is what they're asking, this is what they're,
So from what you're saying, this design would be okay with you? Something like that?
I like that one, but the ones that are presented tonight, they're not exactly, I guess, community friendly. You go to this, you get out of your garage, you go in your house. You don't come outside unless you go out in the backyard. The one down the lower right, to that, I could see somebody sitting out on the porch and actually communicating and have an interaction with their neighbors, but I can't see that in the ones that were handed out tonight. They're just very isolated.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to continuance.
do we have a second for continuance?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer.
Yes.
Commissioner Egner,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes?
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal?
No.
Thank y'all.
Okay.
All right, on to the next case. Case number 2075, a request for a site plan and design for a parcel 108834003000000100, Lot 1A, for the preferred industrial subdivision for a light industrial shop at 2280 Cole Road by Stanley Thorne, landowner and developer Ben Smith, IPD Solutions engineer, consisting of 1.0 acres plus or minus. Subject to the parcel is currently zoned M1. I'm going to turn this back over to our wonderful planning director, Mr. Barr.
Thank
Pass the
you. We'll just go to the next slide because you read that with the agenda item. Again, this is our kind of I would call like a placeholder type slide. And for site plan design review, I usually break those into like three parts. We have the architectural standards, and then we have the site plan, and we have the landscaping. So this is stating basically the purpose of why the city has architectural standards. Next slide, please. So with this particular proposal, I'm just taking this right from the staff report for this particular case. Again, these are items that either need clarification or are deficient from a technical analysis from the standards. Item 1 is the mechanical systems. The standard for the city is if there are mechanical systems, if they're on the roof, they need to be screened, or if they're on the ground, they need to be screened. In this particular case, there was nothing really provided on the drawings. So we would ask that they would provide on the drawings, and then note that wherever they're proposed, either on the roof or on the ground, they would need to be screened from public street view. Item 2, which is roof requirements. The pitch requirement is for roofs with a pitch from 512 to 1212 as much as possible. So please revise to meet that standard. What's proposed there with item 2, I think it's 3 to 12, just slightly under the 5 to 12. This one here, exterior material. Metal exterior material is proposed on the front and the other sides. Metal siding is not permitted or allowed. Some stone is proposed for the front, which is on the south side and the west sides, basically on the corner, the southwest corner of the building. Basically, we would ask for the standard to be met. Number 4, this is the front building facade standard. Right now, the requirement is that a facade facing a public right-of-way, which in this case would be Cole Road on the south side, would have to be a 20% minimum glass building material. And right now, it's proposed at about 4%, so it's under that standard. Next slide, please. Number 5, this is building design for all facades. All facades shall be surfaced equivalent to the front of the building. And so the front facade is composed of glass, metal, and stone. So whatever is chosen there would have to be applicable to all sides per the code. Next slide, please. Okay, this moves on to the site plan review standards. And moves away from architectural standards specifically. Next slide. I'd like to note here, this is actually from the zoning ordinance, that the site plan approval, if granted by the planning commission, including such conditions that may be a part of the record, shall be effective for a period of 1 year in time. There is a mechanism where that can be I believe through the governing authority may be extended. But generally it's good for 1 year. Next slide, please. So this is a slide shows the detail of the proposed site plan with the proposed building highlighted in yellow, and then the property is bounded by the kind of the pink line, and then certain things are pointed out with the red arrows. So number 1 here. This has to do with designs, provisions applying to vehicular access. Excuse me. Make sure I got the right slide here. Hold on. Oh, yes, yeah, this makes sense, okay. Design provisions applying to vehicular areas, proposed, basically, they're showing some exterior lighting details. It's basically, they're trying to show illumination outside the building for where the vehicular areas would be, where the vehicles would move or whatever. But we'd ask for the exterior lighting details, that they would be shaded, fully shielded. Number 2, access and driveway curb cuts. Proposed, the driveway entrance is about 5 feet from the west property line. The actual standard is 10 feet, so please revise to meet that. Number 3, off-street loading. Proposed, no off-street loading is shown, though one is required for this particular land use, which is seen as light industrial, and a proposed building seen here of 6,000 square feet. So please revise to show one off-street loading space per the code specifications. Next slide, please. So this is number 4. This has to do with stormwater management plan. Staff didn't see anything supplied for drainage purposes. Please provide drainage calculations and abide by drainage requirements by the city engineer. Number 5, general routing of sanitary sewer mains and water distribution piping to serve the development. Proposed, there are utilities in general, overhead electric on the east side, and sanitary sewer locations are provided. Nothing seen for public water supply. So the question is, and maybe the applicant developer can add, clarify for the mix, because there is seen a hydrant on the south side, so we suspect that the water would be come from the south, but we don't know that. And then there's nothing in here about phone service, and will they be located? Any of these be located in the utility easements from the plat? So we'd ask that they provide locations of the utilities for review and satisfy city engineering for both water and sewer design connections and locations. Next slide, please. This gets into the landscaping and screening, and why the city has that, and some specificity there. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this one here, number 1, landscaping and screening. We're deeming the south side as being meeting the definition of streetscape type A. And in that case, the width would have to be at least 20 feet in width for the landscaped area. What's proposed is about 11 feet in width. So we would recommend increase width to meet that standard. Number 2, the parking lot landscaping. For landscape areas related to parking, no landscaped area shall be permitted to contain less than 200 square feet of green space. Looks like there's a single parking lot island. It comes in at around 130 to 140 square feet. So we'd ask that be revised to meet that standard of at least 200 square feet. Next slide, please. And so adding all this together, staff recommends approval of the requested site design and landscape plan for a light industrial shop use at 2280 Cole Road, consisting of 1 acre plus or minus on land that is zoned M1 with the following stipulations, conditions, or changes attached. Number 1, revised plans to show mechanical systems and said systems must be screened, at least from the road, public road visibility. Number 2, revise roof pitch to meet the 512 standard. Number 3, revise exterior design to eliminate metal siding. Number 4, add glass as a building material to meet the 20% requirement for the front facade, which is the south facade. Number 5, make all facades of the same building material, one that meets the city's design standard. Number 6, provide exterior lighting details that meets the city design standards. The idea there is that it basically the light wouldn't spill over onto adjacent properties or cause light pollution. Number 7, move driveway to meet the 10 feet separation distance from the west property line. Number 8, add 1 off-street loading space to the site plan. Number 9, provide drainage calculations for review by city engineer and build improvements according to those reviews Number 10, show water and telephone utility services upon plans for review. Number 11, satisfy city engineering for drainage, water, and sewer design, connections, and locations. Number 12, widen the front landscape area to meet the 20 feet width standard. And 13, increase the front parking lot island landscaping to meet the 200 square feet standard. That would conclude my presentation unless you have any questions.
All right, do we have any questions for Mr. Barr?
I have one question.
Okay.
When these cases are approved pending conditions, how are we assured that these conditions are met?
Excellent question. Thank you for that, Commissioner Little. No, what happens on review, let's say you approve a site plan and it has conditions, whatever it's 2 or like in this case 13, we keep track of those. And so when we actually get to the point of construction with any applicant, we'll go back to the condition list, either through the minutes or, you know, whatever, however we keep track of that. And we'll just go through to make sure as far as what's submitted that everything has been met. Then we'll try to work with the applicant as best possible to make sure that they are met. And if there's, let's say for like tonight, if there would be some issue that, say you'd recommend something and the applicant was in disagreement, but you still wanted to approve it, they could basically appeal it to the alderman if they wanted to basically appeal that, whatever that condition was, or conditions, group of conditions or something like that. But no, we keep track of the approvals and the conditions, and then so finally when they get to building permit stage, then we'll just go through our list and just check them off accordingly, and I just go through it, and if there's something still not met, we just tell them, you know, revise until we can review it and approve it.
Okay, and these conditions, what we approve is actually presented to the alderman, correct?
No, we have not been doing that. I mean, we can do that. At this point, we've basically just been leaving site plan and design standards, that particular review basically being approved by the Planning Commission.
Oh, I was talking about any case.
So what's that?
I was talking about any case like what we had before, where there's a dispute with kind of what types of houses.
Oh, well, now with Sage Creek, that actually was a public hearing. I don't know if we asked for any public hearing on that input, because that was an amendment to already an existing PUD plan or development plan. So that was actually a hearing. So there was a legal notice and everything like that. With site plan design reviews, that doesn't have the same level of like putting an ad in the newspaper. There's no posting that actually goes on the physical property, anything like that. So it's much more of you might say it's a relationship between the planning commissioner and the developer, really, on working out the details and that sort of thing.
Okay, so would our recommendations then be forwarded to the alderman for consideration, or do they start all over with a brand new argument with the alderman?
So are you talking about Sage Creek, or are you talking about this case?
No, not this case, any case.
Well, if it's site plan design review, it pretty much stops. If you guys approve it, it's approved or whatever, unless there would be some point of objection on one of the conditions or whatever, or if, let's say, you deny it, then it could be appealed by the developer to go to the alderman. With other cases, such as like rezoning, a conditional use, a planned unit, either amendment or establishing a PUD, those are all public hearings. So those by definition would be first heard by the Planning Commission and then taken on to the alderman. They would have the final say on those types of cases. And the same with subdivisions. So like if we had subdivisions, like tonight you have like a final plat, it's basically a recommendation, and then we'll take that to the alderman, and they make the final decision on the final plats.
Okay, so our recommendation, our actual recommendation is considered by the alderman.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
if you have a case that's before you, and that goes to the alderman, that was part of the record, and I provide those minutes to them in the packet that goes to them, so they'll know exactly everything that happened in the meeting as far as like the minutes tonight that you reviewed from February. The cases that went to them in March, they got that copy of the February minutes, and so they have that plus the whole entire packet that you have as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. My question is, there's like 13 recommendations, say, in this particular design. When is the developer made aware of these recommendations?
Well, what staff tries to do following, like, let's say, a meeting like this, we'll type on the minutes, and then when we get, it's usually like the week of or the week after, we'll let the developer or the applicant know what the outcome was. It'll either be, usually it's just an email, so it's more formalized that way and not just through a phone call. So it'll be like an email, we'll tell them this is what was approved or not approved, and these are the conditions that were attached. And so that's normally how we communicate that. Sometimes we might go, depending on the situation, we might go as high as a letter, an actual paper letter, but due to the crunch of time and then the slowing of the postal service, we usually stick with the email for now. But
I asked because I'm just wondering if you're aware of the conditions, why do they come? And the conditions
I guess
aren't met.
she's wanting to know, are they aware of the conditions prior to the meeting?
Yes, so.
yes, the staff tries to, in the creation of any case, the calendar is basically delved out. So like we're starting to work on April Planning Commission cases. And so I work on the staff report first, and then I'll do the PowerPoints for each of those cases. But then what I try to do is usually on the Thursday, and I didn't do it this time, I didn't get it until Friday, I'll try to get the staff report to the applicants as well, so they have a few days heads up. And what I'm trying to do is I think typically the Planning Commission had received the Planning Commission packets on Friday, so I've been trying to do better than that, either on a Thursday or this time it was, we had them delivered Wednesday last week. So to give you more time to go through, because lots of times it's quite a bit of information to process. Or if you go through the agenda and you want to actually take a site visit, if you want to go out there and, kind of look around or whatever to kind of ascertain, the development question that's before you. So we're trying to move that up, and then we try to move, as far as the staff report to the developer applicant, we try to get that to them on a Thursday. That would be the normal protocol. In this case, a lot of them we didn't get until Friday. So just because of the busyness of the week last week.
So they get the recommendations pretty much a day before us?
No, normally they would get it afterwards. I'm hoping, well, it would either be the same day. I'm hoping actually we would have the Planning Commission packets on Thursday, and then the staff report to the developer on that same Thursday. That's what I'm hoping to do. So,
Do we have any other questions do we have the applicant here?
Mr. Chairman, Ben Smith.
How are you doing today?
2700 Stonebrook, Nesbit, and I have with me Mr. Thorne here, who is the owner and will be building the building there. First of all, I received this about 2 hours ago. So to answer some of your questions, how come this hasn't been addressed? We are in agreement with probably 80% of this, what needs to be done to bring this up to what Chad wants, but I'll go through that list, and we also got a picture of the building. I want to remind you, we're on Cole Road, if you know what's around us there on Cole Road. So we're trying to make it look better, but it's not the middle of a brand new industrial park. If I could go down this list real quick, that on the staff report, revised plans to show mechanical systems and set systems must be screened. They're going to be ground-mounted heat and cooling units, and they will be blocked and they will be screened. We have no problem with that. We understand that and realize that has to be. The roof pitch, we will match the 512 standard, or it will be greater than 512. Exterior design to eliminate metal siding. Please, what's around us there, your code says it cannot be galvanized or plain metal. This, if you look at this drawing here, this is a finished metal, not a galvanized, and it's not a plain metal, but it is a enameled metal finish. And we do have stone accents there to make this a very attractive building, especially for the area that it's in. Add glass as a building material to meet 20% requirement for the front facade. That drawing you're looking at shows some overhead doors. Those will not be there. It'll actually be an office across the front with other glass there. So we will meet that standard of 20% glass on the front facade. I'll make all facades the same building material. Actually, we have a gate. If you look at the site plan, after you enter the gate, then the metal of the building would be behind the gate, but it is not plain metal or galvanized metal. Exterior lighting, we will provide the staff with a photoelectric design plan that shows the wattage or the light, what's the word I'm trying to use here? We will show the how much light the lights will be shown. We've already made the 10-foot separation distance from the driveway. We've already moved that on our site plan. So that's already been done. We, at the rear of that building, if you look on the site plan, Chad, if you don't bring it up, we show a loading or canopy on the back. And that canopy actually is just covered loading and unloading. We call it a canopy, but trucks back up there and load and unload. So we actually have more than one parking space for loading and unloading at the back. So we exceed that requirement. We just did not label it as loading and unloading. Drainage calculations, Mr. Thorne owns 4 or 5 more lots in that subdivision area. We're going to have one regional detention design for all the lots that he is developing there. Those plans will be submitted to the city engineer, which is Vince Malavasi. We've talked to him about that. So we will have detention, but it'll be on off this site. Water and telephone, water's on, someone mentioned about the water, it's on the south side of the street. We will have to bore and connect onto it for the water service to this site. Sewer is we're working with Vince now and the development to the north, which is new warehousing, distribution center, I think it's called Horn Lake Distribution Center. We're trying to get them to extend the sewer, their sewer that they're expanding down to us, and we'll be able to gravity our sewer and also hopefully eliminate a lift station that the city of Horn Lake now operates. So I think if this thing works out, the city of Horn Lake will be doing away with a lift station. So we're working on that sewer design with Vince and the developer to the north. Number 12, let me come back to that if I could.
Okay.
We've already increased the parking island on the front to 10 by 20, so it meets number 13. We've already done that. Along Cole Road, there is no landscaping at all along Cole Road. It's a dead-end street. We can understand the 20-foot if we were out on Hurt Road or Goodman Road or Nail Road, but this Cole Road is just a narrow road that ends at Memphis Hardwood, I think it's the name of the business down there. So we show a 10-foot. We think this is 10 foot more than anything else on that street. So we're requesting, if you can, grant us a variance from 20 foot to 10 foot on that. So I think if we'd had adequate time, I think we could have addressed most of these things, but we will address those. And to the satisfaction of Mr. Barr, and of course, satisfaction of the city of Horn Lake, so.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Barr, now they were discussing the fact on the metal building that about the unfinished portion, and that theirs is actually got painting. And then I was reading the what you had provided for us, and it does say stuff about unfinished and unfinished steel and galvanized aluminum buildings. So my question is does theirs fall under unfinished or finished?
Well, I guess I'd put that back to the Planning Commission, because I'm not sure what you've done historically here, and I don't want to negate what you've done in the past as far as how you've defined and applied certain design standards to certain areas of town. Obviously, if it's painted, if you consider that's finished, well, then I guess that's good enough or whatever. But reading the wording, though, you get the idea that you get the impression that they're trying to not have like an agricultural type building in town. And so I don't know if this, in your mind or whatever, when you look at it, as far as what's proposed, if that, it looks like a machine shed, or if it looks like a dressed up machine shed or not. So, what I try to do is I try to bring stuff before you that I feel that, you know, I'd rather err on the side of safety as opposed to just saying it's met. So, so I'd rather have, you know, if there's something like this, we're going to discuss, you know, as far as interpretation or applying the standard or whatever, as far as what you've done historically. So that's how I'd answer that or whatever. Maybe if you want to say, well, it's painted, it's finished, well, then it meets it. I guess it's not an issue. But if you're not satisfied with that, well, then maybe something more needs to be done.
Okay.
So.
Any questions for the applicant?
Just a quick question. You said you're on the south side of Cole Road?
The water is.
Oh, but you're on the north side.
We're
building.
on the north side.
Okay. I was about to say, I don't know how you're gonna build on the south side.
Yeah. Well, if it's done right, you mix metal, painted metal, if you want to call it, but with masonry. It's a beautiful building. I was trying, in my mind, sitting here trying to think of a building, but I think the tech building, the high school tech building, used a combination of metal and brick. I think the intent was not to have barn buildings or all metal buildings. And we tried to mix, if you look, those stone and the metal.
Chairman,
Yes.
I believe you described the metal as enamel finished, is that what you said?
What's, there's a term for it, but it's a coated,
The powder coated or
baked
something?
on.
Is there a color to that?
What? K-Nar is the name of it. K-Nar.
K-Nar.
Is there a color to
Mr.
that?
Wilson knows more than I do.
Pretty much this is what this color is gonna be.
Yeah, I got it. I've got that picture. Go ahead. So it's gonna be like red or gray, or what is that? What part are we talking about on that building?
It's almost a maroon burgundy looking color, I think.
So this is the metal we're talking about.
Metal is here and here.
In here, so it's gonna be two different colors.
Yeah, it's gonna be two different colors, and then all across here, this door right here will not be here.
There'll be windows
The
there.
stone will come across, and it'll be this, it'll be all the way across the front building.
Yeah.
Stone all the way across the front building.
Well, that looks pretty good. I drove down there today, and that looks pretty good.
Do we have any other questions?
Well,
I have,
go ahead.
he's asking for a variance on number 12. Mr. Barr, in that area, the variance would be okay for 10 feet?
In this, very good question, Commissioner Vidal. You know, you could go the route of a variance, but technically a variance is a public hearing, so we'd have to all start back and go in another month or two from now and have a hearing. And there's 4 criteria to meet for that. And at least as staff, I'm vehemently opposed of overdoing variances. That's been a practice nationwide where they've been overdone over the years. There is an avenue for the developer to choose. It's under item K or paragraph K. It's called an exception. And there's fewer criteria to meet, and there's no public hearing involved. And basically, they just ask for an exception, and they want to provide some detail, you know, basically present their argument why they feel it should be considered and granted as an exception. And then that would be something you would have to consider as a body, and then whether to grant the exception for whatever the particular point is.
And isn't that what they've asked for technically in this, since they only have 10 feet on their plan?
We're not asking for any less trees, no less landscaping, but just the width, so.
Okay. I mean, I'm just asking. I mean, so.
Well, the wording was discussed with the development team here, or whatever, as far as asking for an exception. And the way the staff took it is that they chose not to do that. So we just did a pure analysis of the things that were either met or not met. And so the things that weren't met that we saw were 13 things. Okay. So we have another application coming up later tonight. They chose to make a formal application. They'll present their argument to you, and you'll have to consider that on its merits. So that's how we process it. I mean, yeah.
So in these 13 things, the metal siding and the 20 feet are really the only 2
correct
sticking points. And Can we move the 20 foot to 10 feet using the exception rule tonight?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, if they've presented some argument here for that particular position, and then you just have to weigh it in your mind to see if that raises to the validity of being able to grant it or not. Yeah.
Is there anybody here that would be unwilling to change number 3,
13, 12.
change item number 3 to revise exterior design to establish finished metal exterior, which is what they're going to do anyway. And then change number 12 to meet the landscaping 10 feet wide standard. Is there any objection to that, to those two changes?
I just say we make sure we consider anybody else building there that they'll probably want that same thing.
Well, and also if you say standard where? Is that standard on just Cole Road, or is that standard on Goodman Road?
Well, we'd be
Or-
making an exception. That's what it is.
Right, it would need to be an exception.
Mr. Thorne owns all the land from here to the corner, which has a warehouse on it, tilted up concrete walls on it. He also owns the frontage on Hurt Road, so he understands probably if you do agree to 10 foot on Cole Road, there will be 20 foot on Hurt Road that he owns, so he owns the land, so he'll understand this. He
So
has
would
to
you like
have
to
at least
change
10
the
foot.
wording on number 12 to 10 foot width Cole Road only, or something like that?
I don't think we have to do that. I think we just make an exception on this particular thing.
I
We
think
just
so,
make
too.
a 10 foot exception.
Okay.
So do we have a motion?
Well, I'll make the motion to, after review of the application, case number 2075, site plan design review, a site, request for light industrial shop at 2280 Cole Road consisting of 1 acre plus or minus on land that is zone M1. The Horn Lake Planning Commission approves the request with the following conditions attached, 1 through 13, item number 3 and item number 12 changed as discussed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal,
Yes.
and Commissioner Egner.
Yes.
We thank you.
Thank
very
y'all.
much.
Thank you.
All right, case number 2061, a request for a final plat on a minor subdivision named the Fountains of Fairfield Meadows, Section J, Lot 1, to be located at 4140 Fountain Lane in Horn Lake by HL Ventures LLC, developer and landowner, and Ben Wobble Engineering, engineering company on land that is zoned planned unit development consisting of approximately 1.15 acres plus or minus for a Tidal Wave brand car wash. Now I'll turn this back over to Director Barr.
Thank you. I'm doing some housekeeping here, hold on. For the minutes. All right, thank you. I won't reread that, but thank you for reading that to introduce this particular case. Next slide, please. Again, this is kind of the placeholder standard slide. Gives the title and purpose and definitions in this particular case of a final plat, which that's what you see here before you tonight. Next slide. And this one, excuse me, this is a minor subdivision since the road is already in place and public facilities are already in place in the area. The sketch plat stage, which would be the normal starting spot for a minor subdivision, was skipped. Thus, this is your first look at this particular development as a final plat. So just to pick out some points from the staff report, it's 1.15 acres, one lot is proposed. None of it's proposed is in the designated 100-year floodplain. As I said, no public road is proposed. With the subdivision, water is provided by the Walls Water Association. The sewer would be no, I've got in the slide, it says City of Horn Lake Water Association. That's not, I think it's just City of Horn Lake. So I apologize for the error on the slide. And the zoning is the PUD. And it's highlighted, you can see the particular property is highlighted on that screen with the blue line. You can see Goodman Road on the west and Fountain Lane on the south, and then one property over to the east is Penny Lane. Next slide, please. As we saw earlier tonight, we've got specific design standards from Article 3 of the subdivision regulations. This here is Section 3460, which is lots. Should be of, they'll provide satisfactory and desirable building sites. And so from the plat, it shows a single end resulting lot at about 191 feet of width and 260 feet of depth. It also shows the properly required utility easements along the sides of the subject property. So in staff's opinion, this provides a satisfactory and desirable building site, for a modern building, necessary landscaping, and for the proposed car wash land use. Next slide, please. As we saw earlier in the other case, we also have this section 34-62, which is the general suitability. Again, it's kind of like that double check, almost from a land use perspective on a plat. So we see the final plat is in a commercial area, an area of contiguous commercial zoning, and to the subject property, it's commercial zoning to the east, west, south, and then also commercial zoning across Goodman Road to the north. And so we see that as a positive feature, that this basically is commercial property right in the middle of basically other commercial property. So it seems a very well placed requirement or proposal, excuse me. Next slide, please. This is dealing now with, from Article 4 of the subdivision regulations, specifically Section 3489, minimum standards E. This, again, as we saw earlier, talks about the sidewalks. No proposed sidewalk is seen. And so when I drove out in the area to do like a field analysis, there aren't any sidewalks with, obviously not all the parcels have been developed yet, but even when I look at the plat, I don't see a sidewalk for McDonald's, which would be west of this site. There's no sidewalk at Aldi. Even when we just did the final plat for Wendy's, there was no sidewalk there. I was doing some research today on the ADA requirements, because we saw that earlier. It's like, well, does all new development in the United States have to have a sidewalk or not? And I couldn't answer that from the length of the research, the time I had to do the research. Obviously, if you provide for a sidewalk or connection points, it all has to be according to ADA standards. That's very clear. Topography, excuse me, the topography is kind of a challenge here. Like if we wanted to go with a sidewalk on the north side of the property, because there's about a 4 to 6 foot drop topography wise. And so on the plat, there is no proposed sidewalk seen. Obviously, of all the land uses that are proposed there, if you go from east to west, you got Aldi, Wendy's, car wash, which is this, and McDonald's. This is probably the least intensive driver or demander, if you will, of pedestrian traffic, because nobody's going to go on foot to get their car washed. I mean, you might have employees that go to work there. The more I got thinking about this, I may just drop that as a condition, because when I talked to McDonald's, Mike Crowley, that's doing the development on McDonald's, which they're going to start construction on April the 4th over there, we'd talked and we'd kind of come up with the idea that for the area to have sidewalks, maybe it's best from a topography standpoint to put it on the south side of Fountain Lane. That's yet to be platted over there. And then as these are developed, they could put in crosswalks and then access to the individual buildings, which would have ADA compliant access to the buildings. So perhaps that's the best overall picture or design way to go about to provide access from an ADA perspective. So, okay, moving on to 2K, which is erosion and sediment control. No mention of that on the plat, so we would add that a note be added that they would develop according to best practices for erosion and sediment control. Next slide. So staff recommends approval of the requested subdivision final plat of the one lot, 1.15 acre area named The Fountains at Fairfield Meadows, Section J, Lot Number 1, for the commercial development of a car wash at 4140 Fountain Lane with the following conditions attached. I would drop off A, which talks about the sidewalk. Item B, which I guess would become the new A. Add to the plat a note to the effect the plat, when it's designed, developed, and constructed, it be in such a manner as to provide for the most effective control for erosion and sediment per the subdivision regulation standards. And then C, which would become B, file the final plat application and all required documents associated with that upon approval. So basically, it's kind of formalizing that they finish, by doing the recordation of the county and all those things that would be attached to that. So that would conclude the presentation.
All right, any questions for Director Barr?
I'm a little troubled that we're gonna say that we're gonna drop the sidewalk requirement for this particular business, but we wouldn't for the daycare. So we need to figure out I like the south side of the properties. I like that because it's less traffic back there and it will pull people away from Goodman Road. Because
Yes.
Goodman Road is crazy in
It
that
is.
particular area. So we need to find some kind of resolution for that. I just don't feel it's fair to require her to do it and not.
Right. It's, the sidewalk issue is becoming problematic on a case-to-case basis.
Right.
And most of these are, occurring along Goodman Road. And I don't have a good answer as far as, if you build, you have to provide a sidewalk. I couldn't find that, nor could, I had the intern doing some research on that as well, from the ADA perspective. Obviously, if someone builds a sidewalk, it has to be to ADA standards. There's no question about that, with the proper slopage, width, connection points, signage in the parking lot, all that sort of stuff for handicap designated parking, that sort of thing. I don't know if we could put, I don't know if you can put a condition that, to say it goes on the south side because it's a different property or whatever. So you're putting a condition on somebody that's not here. Well, maybe Mr. Brown owns that. Maybe he's here. I don't know who owns the property to the south on the south of Fountain Lane. So I don't have a good solution for the issue. I really don't.
Yeah, because you do have to take into consideration, we have a school that's just walking distance of there. And when that school lets out, you're going to have a herd of kids coming down there that's going to be going to Wendy's and McDonald's and even Aldi's. So we need to somehow find to resolve it somehow.
Yeah, well, there is no built sidewalk at Aldi. There isn't one.
Right.
So, and I don't know if that was a function of MDOT interacting, saying, okay, on this intersection, it's got enough traffic, but you would think regardless, you could put a sidewalk, well, you don't see sidewalks built along the interstate or whatever, but, but it looks like most of the things that are being built on the west side of town, they're coming with sidewalks. I actually think there is on the north side of Wendy's, McDonald's and the car wash, I think there's actually room off of all of these properties. It looks like most of these properties are being developed to the south of the actual land area. But it probably would be on the city's dollar, if you will. And it may involve actually doing a cut and like a retaining wall because of the topography on that side, on the north side of these lots or whatever. So, yeah.
Okay.
I need to ask you a question. You're talking about the sidewalks. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, there was a gentleman killed on Horn Lake Road, about 100 yards from Aldi's. He was taking his groceries and everything to his house. He was walking. There was no sidewalks on Horn Lake Road. There's no sidewalks on Goodman Road at that point. I think we should have, and this includes everything that is being built new now, should have a sidewalk. I don't care if it's Golden Gate Bridge or child play area. Put sidewalks on them so they can have a place to walk instead of down the middle of the highway.
It's a very good point, because really, I mean, you think if you want to be a contemporary, modern-day city, when I drive around town, I see people all the time walking on dirt paths and stuff along roads, and or down the road itself, whether it be Nail Road or whatever, there's no sidewalk. And so it seems reasonable to require that, and I don't know if that was missed in the plating process with Aldi and McDonald's, or what, but when you go out there, it just lacks it, and then and so now when you get to this point where it's the last one on that side of the 4 properties, then it really stands out, and so it'd really be nice if they were all linked together with a sidewalk in some manner. Just from a pure safety standpoint, because not everybody drives, and actually that would actually help some, not a lot, a very small percentage of the people that go up and down Goodman or some of the other section line roads or whatever. If they could walk from, just a few blocks, they might choose to do that, as opposed to there's no safe alternative because there's no sidewalk, so they get in a car and it just adds traffic to those roads. So.
Any other questions? Now, I will make one comment, is the fact that as much as I agree with sidewalks, but it's going to look very weird if we require them to put a sidewalk in front of that, and there's no other sidewalks on either side of that. That's just my perception on aesthetics. So unless we're going to go back to McDonald's and Aldi and tell them that they have to do that after they've been approved, just one strip of sidewalk is not going to do any good. Is the applicant here?
You gotta start somewhere.
Good evening. I'm Ben Womble, Womble Engineering, representing the developer tonight. We understand your concern over sidewalks. We've talked about that at length tonight. We're in agreement with the conditions as stated by Mr. Barr. We would ask for your consideration on the sidewalk issue for reasons that we've already stated. As the commissioner pointed out, at this point, the developments on either side have not been required to have sidewalks. So we would have, literally a 200-foot strip of sidewalk with nothing on either side. So, like I said, other conditions we're fine with. The one for sidewalks, we would ask for your consideration to eliminate that from this particular plat.
Y'all have any questions? Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Barr, you said that it wasn't required for McDonald's or Wendy's. It was just missed?
It looks like it was missed, because, actually, when you look at the standards of the subdivision regulations, it says all subdivisions, if it's a local road, needs to have a sidewalk on at least one side of the road. And it says for major roads, it needs to have a sidewalk on both sides of the road. The only time that it's accepted out, or the standard is lessened, if you will, if it's on a cul-de-sac, when then it says no sidewalks need to be provided on a cul-de-sac, like in a residential area. So that's the actual standard per the subdivision regulations dealing with sidewalks. But whether that was missed or they talked about it and they chose not to do it, I don't know. I wasn't here, so I don't know what the history of that is. I can try to research it and see if I can find an answer. I don't know if I'll be able to find one or not.
Will the south side of Fountain Lane also be used for businesses, retail? Any business? Storefronts, anything else?
It's a good question. On the south side of Fountain Lane, it's also part of this PUD, this planned unit development. And I believe this portion of the PUD, like to the south, of course, the houses are built or whatever, and this is the commercial area that's filling out. So to answer your question, yeah, it would be another commercial use of some sort on the south side of Fountain Lane. We've had some tentative discussion with the property south of Aldi, and that would be a commercial use there on a separate property. And then west of that, but still south of Fountain Lane, one larger parcel remaining, but it's kind of awkward to develop because of the curved road, and then it's curved behind it because of the residences. So it looks like there would be 2 commercial uses on the south side of Fountain Lane going from east to west.
So this could end up being, like, I think Ms. Little mentioned this, an area where people could park in one spot and go around and walk and shop, right? It could develop in there, even though we dropped the ball on McDonald's and Wendy's.
I would say we should, as a city, we should definitely, on the south side, definitely require those developments to have sidewalks. And then as people, It would be actually even better if, you know, you had like crossings at certain distances or whatever, so they could get to the north side. They wouldn't necessarily find a sidewalk, but it puts them then in a drive lane, a traffic drive lane. Let's say to go to McDonald's, you'd go across the street from a sidewalk, and then you'd be in the vehicular travel path, and then they would make their way to the sidewalk that's around the building, with no sidewalk there. So there is some connectivity on the south side, and they could get to the north side, but once they got to the north side, there'd be no sidewalks there.
I think I'm envisioning people walking down Goodman Road and they hit that incline where, in front of the car wash, and they, you know, it's unstable footing, it's a lot of traffic, somebody's gonna die.
Oh, yeah, somebody would tumble down that, because it's like a 5 to 6 foot, 4 or 5 foot elevation, because there's a Goodman Road, and then it goes up several feet, and then it to the south, the elevation goes down as you go towards Fountain Lane.
Okay, so what is our recourse for McDonald's, Wendy's, and Aldi's not having sidewalks? Is there a recourse?
Well,
Because
there
I
is.
strongly feel that we need to have
Yeah,
sidewalks.
I've talked to Mike Crowley with McDonald's. They already were deficient there on parking standards and some of their landscaping standards or whatever. They didn't really have room for a sidewalk on their property. I don't know if we can see, maybe John, I don't know if you could bring up the plat on this particular case, just as a reference point. Unless you already moved on to the next case, I don't know. But from what I'm trying to get at is from my observations is that you've got Wendy's, Tidal Wave Car Wash. Yeah, thank you. And I don't know if you can see it there, it's very small, but you've got Tidal Wave, you've got McDonald's, you've got Wendy's. Each of those properties are kind of southward, if you will, in that area. But then there's actually part of the road right away. Before you actually get to the curb of Goodman Road, there's an area there where I think a sidewalk could be placed. But because of the topography, it's gonna have to be cut in. And basically, you're looking at probably a 4 to 6 foot height, I'm just guessing, a retaining wall to keep the dirt up. And then you'd have the sidewalk, then you'd have the curb, and then you have Goodman Road. It would provide an ADA width as far as levelness and width for a sidewalk there, but it wouldn't be on any of those these private properties or whatever. It would be on the city, excuse me, it'd be on the state right away. And I don't know what MDOT, it'd have to be a conversation with MDOT on the sidewalk there. They may not want it at all because they just don't want anybody even near the road, you know, because I've walked up and down the sidewalk out here, and you know the speed limit is 45, but a lot of times people aren't doing 45, they're doing 50 or 55. And I'm even scared.
75.
I'm even scared to go across the road at the traffic light. Out here.
I wouldn't dare go across the
So
road.
I do it, and I watch very carefully or whatever, because I like to walk down to like Family Dollar or the bank or you know what have you. But you know, my personal professional opinion that they should drop the speed limits, but they probably don't drop the speed limits because people probably aren't going to follow it very much. So, because when I look at Goodman Road, I see a lot of commercial access points and a high speed, and usually you would see a lower speed overall. You'd see like a 35 mile an hour or a 40 at most, not a 45, and then people pressing that doing 50 or 55. So it's a recipe for carnage in the future. It really is.
Well, and that also leads another question. What do you do about the ADA, the people that are in wheelchairs that don't have access to, just say Wendy's, because there's no sidewalk?
Right.
So what do you do?
Yeah, we have it on our checklist. We have it at the subdivision stage because we haven't with this. I'm actually doing the review. I was working on the review today for the car wash here for site plan design review in April. But on our checklist for review, it's in the subdivision because the actual requirement for sidewalks, if there is one, is in the subdivision regulations. It doesn't really talk about it too much in the zoning. It's in the subdivision regulations. That's where the wording's found.
So in that case, the city need to go back and take care of sidewalks, right?
They would have to, yes.
In that case, we will have a future,
So
most likely with sidewalks.
can't we write it in our new plan?
Well, I don't know if I mean, we could reiterate it, I think, on the plan. There's probably already something in the plan now. I think the comprehensive plan that talks about connectivity and accessibility, there's probably already something there. Matter of fact, the intern was telling me about that today. We actually have wording in the comprehensive plan. Don't ask me specifically where. where it talks about promoting connectivity, sidewalk, pedestrian use, that sort of thing. So it's already in there.
Okay.
So actually what you have is you have the comprehensive plan saying, encouraging sidewalk development within the community, and then you actually have a specific requirement in the subdivision regulations.
We don't need to encourage, we need to require.
Do we have any other questions? All right, do we have a motion?
Did we address whether or not he was gonna get, not putting in a sidewalk or not? I
That'd be,
think we need a
That's
sidewalk.
up to us.
that would be up to us.
That'll be up to us.
That's what we'll do.
We need a sidewalk. Let us go.
Yeah, again, we would just ask for you to consider for this particular lot, just being based on this location and the existing approvals on either side, that for this particular lot, that we would, eliminate that requirement for this particular lot only.
Well, the way I look at it, because of the topography, I would think it would be more, that you would need it more than a typical, where you could walk down the side of the road and there's like a worn path. There's not gonna be one in this area. So I'm a proponent of sidewalks.
I understand.
Do we have a motion?
I have a motion.
For a sidewalk?
Go ahead, Commissioner Little.
After a review of application case number 2061, a request for the subdivision final plat of the one lot, 1.15 acre area named the Fountains of Fairfield Meadows, Section J, Lot 1, for the commercial development of a car wash at 4140 Fountain Lane with the following conditions attached. And I'll read this one. It's A, add a sidewalk. It says to the south side of the subject property for the requirements of the subdivision regulations. Is that right? Or we need it on the north side?
South side.
South side?
South, because Walmart.
South side is Fountain Lane.
South side is
Okay.
Fountain Lane. That's where most of the traffic will be in the parking lot.
Okay, and then
Right.
A, so with conditions A through C.
Could I ask you consider to eliminate, just for the approval of the plat, eliminate condition A and make that a site plan review issue to be considered at the next meeting?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
I thought he just.
He's asking for A to be eliminated. We've already had that discussion and the motion's been made unless Commissioner Little wants to amend her and remove letter A, which is the sidewalks.
How would we address that in the future? Because I want to make sure that it is addressed.
We have the site plan review coming up in April for,
Because there's two ways to do it, either the site plan or you can go with your motion as is, and then if they wanted to appeal, they can take it to the alderman to appeal that.
Let it go to the alderman.
Okay, as long as it's in the design, we can eliminate A. But I do want it addressed.
we can certainly do it in the site plan review.
Go ahead.
If I may, obviously as a plat, this will automatically go to the alderman in April, I think like April the 19th. When we do site plan design review, I can remember the sidewalk issue, but there's nothing that's
Gonna be required.
that's gonna trigger it or whatever. If I want to add it to it, just from remembering the plat or whatever, I guess that would be my comment.
Okay, so we need to keep it? Is that what your
If
recommendation
you
is?
want it addressed,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and then we'll keep it.
Okay, so the motion with all recommendations A through C and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Inger,
Yes.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal.
Yes.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Case number 2078, a request for a site plan, design, and landscape review for a property located from addressing range 1010 to 1144 Nell Road West by Wilson Development, developer and owner, and Blake Mindrop Engineering Resources LLC, engineering company, for establishing 6 commercial light industrial buildings ranging from 6,000 to 9,500 square feet on land zoned as planned unit development consisting of approximately 4.9 acres plus or minus.
I'd like to make a motion.
Director Barr.
Thank you. We'll just go to the next slide.
Let's go home.
And of course, this is the architectural standards placeholder file. That's why we have those. Next slide. So this is from the staff report on this particular case. There was, as far as number 1, dumpster enclosures, there was nothing really shown on the drawings. So we would ask that they would add the dumpsters on the site plan, and then, of course, they'd have to be screened from public street view. Number 2, mechanical systems. Nothing shown either on the roof or on the site plan. We'd ask that, require that they provide, and they'll have to be screened from public view. Number 3, the roof requirement. The pitch requirement is for roof from either, as we saw before, 5 to 12 or 12 to 12 as much as possible. That's the actual wording in the design standard where it says as much as possible. Staff revised to meet the 512 pitch or ask for an exception to why the standard can't be met. Next slide, please. Here again, this is this exterior material where it talks about the, it's not, the ordinance is not accepting, I guess you would say, of using metal as an exterior finish. And that's what's proposed in this particular case. Yes, metal exterior material is proposed on the front and the other sides. Metal siding is not permitted or allowed. The staff here, the applicant has asked for an exception from this design standard, and there's been some wording provided in your packet for their reasoning why they want to do it. Staff is supportive of this material design request. I just want to note is, you know, that may look like totally different from the last case, but the last case they never asked for an exception. So it was just metal, and that's what I saw. In this particular case, they've actually asked for an exception. I thought they did a decent job of presenting an argument to allow for that as an exterior building material. Number 4, building exterior wall finishes. It asks for a combination of at least 2 of the following materials: brick or natural stone or glass or masonry stucco, hardy plank, or other comparable or superior material approved by the Planning Commission. Again, a modern metal design is proposed here. Next slide. This is where we have the exterior wall finishes, facade facing the public right-of-way, which in this case is the south side of all 6 buildings. Requires a 20% minimum glass as a building material, but about 2 to 4% is proposed on each of the facades on that south side. We're again supportive of the exception request as presented in the design renderings. I also do have some photos here as well. I don't know if I put that in your packet or not.
You did.
Did I? Okay, very good. And I think the applicant may have some other additional drawings as well, perhaps. And so, due basically to the functionality, I mean, I see the design standard, you know, where it wants the 20% glass standard on the public facade, you know, the reasoning for that. But in this particular case, where we're looking at light industrial buildings, because of the functionality of what goes on inside, and also because of the structure, I don't know if the glass would provide as much strength as opposed if they went with less glass. So we're supportive of the request to accept out from that and use the design as they've proposed. Next slide. This talks about site plan review. I won't dwell on that. Next slide, please. Again, the approval, if approved here tonight, would be good for a year on the site plan approval. Next slide. Okay, here we get into site plan review standards. Number one, a tree/survey or tree management plan. No information submitted regarding a tree survey or management plan. This would need to be submitted before trees are removed. I don't know how many of those actually, there's in, it's chapter, I believe, 14, Article 3. It talks about tree mitigation within the city code. It's outside of the zoning ordinance. I don't know how many of the trees that are there actually meets a particular definition of there's a definition if it's a certain size or whatever. Of the trees, most of the trees that are there look like they're volunteer and they're younger. So, but we'd ask that they would provide that to provide clarity. And then number two, stormwater management plan. They're proposing collection points at various locations within the site plan. No, there's a letter from Neil Schaefer, Greg Russell specifically. They do the review for the city for engineering reasons. The letter is dated March the 7th. And they have about, 4 or 5 comments dealing with clarifications to either the design of the plans pertaining to stormwater drainage. So we'd ask that the applicant would clarify that as provided. They would clarify that to provide, as requested, all drainage items per that letter. Then number 3, grading and surface and maintenance. Limestone is proposed behind the buildings, the 6 buildings. The standard is for either asphalt or concrete. We're not sure how much of a vehicular area behind those buildings it's going to function as, so that's probably a question for clarity from the applicant. Let's see. And then we've got number 4 there, off-street loading. 1 space per building is required, but nothing specifically is proposed or called out on the site plan. One thing I want to add, I probably should have added it earlier or whatever, is that this is one lot. When you look at that, there's actually lines that are dropped in between the buildings, and I've asked for clarification from the developer, the applicant on that, and they said they've dropped in those lines and they've called these lots like 1 through 6, but the whole idea is that this is one lot. They intend to develop it as one lot with 6 buildings, but those lines are dropped in to show in the future that because they plan to lease these buildings or properties out, that if they were approached on a purchase type basis, that they could actually purchase each one, and it shows in this case that they could meet setbacks and each building could function independently, with drainage, with parking, with loading or whatever's going on in the back there. So that's why it looks like it does, because sometimes you look at it and you go, wasn't this a 6-lot subdivision? But no, it's actually a 1-lot subdivision, but they're just showing the 6 buildings and their prospective potential future lot lines, I guess you could say. So I just wanted to clarify on that in case you had a question. Next slide, please. And then, of course, as I stated earlier, the engineer's review letter, that same March the 7th letter, in totality, there's actually 16 points from that letter. We touched a little bit earlier on the ones that had to do about drainage, but in all, that staff would ask that all items identified in that letter should be addressed to the city's satisfaction upon review. So, and then next slide. So we get on to landscaping. Next slide. I think there's just one item here for landscaping and screening, and it has streetscape type B. I think I actually have a correction in your staff report, because I think I put there was an A and then there was a B. So if there's any confusion there, it actually meets the definition of streetscape type B, which we see addressed up here. So for the south side of the property is applicable and requires a 25 feet wide landscaped area, and plantings are based upon a formula. Proposed is about 10 feet of width with 8 major trees and 0 ornamental trees for the south side. Using the B1 planting standard as found in this section, they would have to increase the landscaping width to 25 feet, plant 12 major trees, staggered evergreen shrubs, and then 46 ornamental trees. It's a long distance there along the frontage there from east to west. Next slide. So in the end, that staff recommends approval of the requested site design and landscape plan for the property located from addresses ranging from 1010 to 1144. So those addresses, we've actually contacted DeSoto County, and they said, because I told them, well, this is what's proposed, which would be the address for each one of these independent buildings. Because the normal standard is that usually in the zoning ordinances, you just get one building per per parcel. And so in this case, they're doing actually 6. And then there's a way to alter off that if that's part of the master development plan. I don't know if the master development plan of DeSoto Commons PUD from 20 years ago is even applicable anymore, or not, or what it says. So continuing on, so that's where we got the address numbers. From 1010 to 1144 Nail Road West by Wilson Development, which is a developer and owner, for establishing 6 light industrial buildings ranging from 6,000 to 9,500 square feet on land zone plan unit development, PUD, consisting of approximately 4.9 acres, plus or minus, with the following conditions or changes attached. A, add dumpster locations with appropriate screening depending upon their locations to the site plan. B, clarify for review of the location of the mechanical equipment for each building. C, make a determination on the roofing designs. D, make determinations on the building material exception request and amounts of glass on the south facades for all 6 buildings. E, perform or / provide tree survey and mitigation plan. F, clarify the rear land use issue behind the buildings. And then G, clarify the off-street loading issue. H, have applicant provide items as listed in the March 7th letter from this year from Neil Schaefer to the city's satisfaction. And I, meet the streetscape B for the south side of the subject property. That concludes the presentation.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Director Barr? All right, is the applicant here?
Austin Wilson, 3242 West Heartland Drive. I'm going to speak briefly on architecturally what we're trying to do, and then I'm going to let Blake handle some other things. Thank you, Mr. Barr, for the very thorough presentation. So the first and most important thing I'm going to say tonight is just touching on metal architecture and kind of our plans on what we have in mind for this project. So the most important thing I want to say before I go any further is we do not want to be grouped into the stigmatized metal buildings that everybody cringes over. So this is not a product from the 1980s or 90s. This is a very contemporary project that we're proposing for you tonight. They're very high end. It's very current contemporary architecture, like I stated, and it's very expensive to produce. So I'm going to go into a little more detail about what we're trying to do. But again, I don't want to be lumped into that category of all metal buildings are bad. Metal architecture, like I said, has come tremendous lengths in the past 10 to 20 years. So the use of metal as a primary material and accent material has increased a ton over the past 10 or 15 years, and these are AIA architects that are using this material. So why are they using the material? And mainly, it's because of its versatility, and it's because of the opportunities that it creates for the creativity in the design, and not to mention the other attributes that it provides, such as sustainability and the positive environmental footprint that it gives. So if you look around at a lot of commercial and industrial properties today, you're going to see steel as a main accent, or it's going to be even a complete steel building. So it's accepted widely in the community. So the big question is, to look at it at a site perspective. From Highway 51 to Interstate Boulevard is where our property spans. We're developing this northeast quadrant first. So at completion, what does this look like? Well, this is going to be a corridor that's going to be mirrored on both sides with 6 buildings in each quadrant. Our property is kind of broken into 4 quadrants. So we kind of have, there's 2 bookends of 2 large tilt-up buildings. So that our design plays directly into what they've done architecturally as well. So, like I said, it fits the site. Actually, the site just north of us as well, the DeSoto County School Board, is a primarily metal building as well. There's one thing that I wanted to touch on from Mr. Barr, the roofing exception. We want to ask formally tonight for an exception for the roofing, and here's why. We're going to be using a parapet system, so we don't want to use a pitch. That completely just plays into our contemporary design with clean lines. We don't want to have pitches. We're going to be going with a parapet system, which is a really expensive way to do it, but we're going to be, basically what that does is it hides all mechanical above the roof. So those exterior walls will extend past the roof line, and we'll be able to hide all mechanical. So it's a clean look, and that's really what we're going for, is sleekness in design. As you can see, some of our photos here that we've worked with designers and architects to create this. And also, to elaborate a little further on what Mr. Barr said about the windows, on the CAD drawings that you've seen there, we've actually beefed up the windows to be a little bit larger than they are. So we're going to be a lot closer to that 20%, but he was very accurate talking about the durability and such in an industrial environment. So the windows will be larger though. So, but like I said, this is a really current project that we're proposing tonight, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Is that the exact color scheme you're going for?
We're open to that. It's going to be a dark charcoal building, and then we're going to have some kind of accent over the entry with the house number here, the numbers here, and then we'll have a logo for each.
Yeah. No, just a question. No discrepancy.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, I have a comment. As proposed, I do like the design and the color scheme, the whole 9 yards.
Thank you.
I think you guys did a good job on that.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, sidewalks, you're gonna have sidewalks?
I'll let Blake touch on that, but we're gonna have no problems with sidewalks tonight. We got about it's almost a mile. I mean, we've got a mile of sidewalks. So
you have both sides
on either side.
So what about the Director Barr? Director Barr had mentioned about the streetscape B on the south side of the property, about it being less than what. So I think y'all have 10, and the requirement's 25.
Yes, Chad, if you'll bring that your recommendations up on that last slide, that way we can address them one by one. Yes, Blakeman Drop with at 134 Public Square in Batesville, Mississippi, and I just wanted to address some of these, and then we'll get to the landscape. As far as the dumpster locations, at this time, they're not planning any dumpster locations. It would just actually be like rollout pickup, which would be in the back of the area. Now, if they, during the actual building design and will come in for permits, if that user needs it, then they will be able to review that at the time. So if there is a, quote, dumpster needed, then yes, we know it will need to be screened, and we will have that addressed at the time. So, okay. Mechanical equipment, I think Austin touched on that. If there is any equipment on the ground, it would be in the back, and it would be screened also if it's not on the top. So, I think Austin talked about the roof design. We had requested an exception for the metal to have this design. And also now he was asking for the pitch just to make sure that we're covered on that. As far as the tree survey and the landscape, I'd like to address that. These, as Austin had already talked about, there's, they own 4 lots. This is just going to be one quadrant, and it's going to go significantly back to the east and then around the corner, significantly back to the west and then around the corner to the east. This location and almost all of them are only around 200 to 250 feet deep, okay? And that's just, of course, Horn Lake owned the property and the Wilsons bought that. And so when you start talking about 20 feet and 25 feet, that is very significant. If it was a, 400 or 500 feet, if we're talking about a Walmart or big commercial, I understand the 20 and 25 feet. But here at this location, there's already on both sides, there's already a sidewalk. So there's already 5 feet to 7 feet from the back of curb to the sidewalk. So we're talking about adding another 10 feet. So that is what we would request as far as an exception to that 25 feet from that standpoint. And we would also like to work with Mr. Barr on, instead of just going to the B, which one is it, Chad?
Is it A?
B1 streetscape is to really work with him and let's come up with a streetscape that will be consistent throughout the entire length through there. We don't want to get, we're not trying to say no landscape. Obviously, we're going to have trees and all, but really work with them to come up with a streetscape that's consistent and doesn't, also is not 3 and 4 foot berms with a lot of stuff that covers this up, and really just ask for an exception on this streetscape to work with the planning department to come up with something that will be contiguous throughout. But we do not have a, well, we'll provide him, there's not many trees out there, but we'd be happy to provide that tree survey and see what we need to do on the mitigation side of that. Don't have a problem with that. In the rear, where that will be loading, where the limestone is, that will be screened. We're talking about having a fence around that. That would just be like, if there was something, let's say if somebody had a granite, you know, they were selling granite or something like that, but they wanted to put some outside that they didn't have to put inside, or some type of pipe, it would be in that outdoor limestone area would be screened.
So a lay-down yard?
Yeah, we're not talking about a big lay-down yard, but a little storage area that could be screened.
Okay.
Any other questions, or did I cover everything, Chad? So we would be asking for the exception that we requested for the metal and also for the roof pitch, and an exception to the
streetscape.
The B1, and to work with the planning department on that.
All right, do we have any other questions?
Okay,
Right.
It says G, clarify the off-street loading issue. That's
Similar to the last application in the rear, we will label that as an off-street in the barracks of the building.
All right, do we have a motion?
Okay, are we good, first of all, with the metal design and the lower percentage of glass?
The glass is he's almost on meter. He said he's making
Right,
bigger.
right.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. Okay, after review of the application case number 2078 SPDR, a request for the review of proposed site, design, and landscape plan for property located from addresses ranges from 1010 to 1144 Nell Road West by Wilson developer and owner for establishing 6 light industrial buildings ranging from 6,000 to 9,500 square feet on land zoned as planned unit development consisting of approximately 4.9 acres plus or minus. The Horn Lake Planning Commission approves of the request with the following conditions attached. That would be plans, conditions A through I, with the exception, we will allow the metal design as in your proposal. And to work with the planning department for your streetscape B.
And
And the roof pitch,
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Inger,
Yes.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved.
Thank you very much. We
All right, thank
appreciate
y'all.
it.
All right. Yep. All right. Now we'll move on to other business. There seems to be an update on land uses on the planned items I through, or I, 1, 2, and 3 from Director Barr. Yeah. Do we need to take a break? Do we need a break, or are we gonna go?
Oh.
Okay. So go ahead.
I'll speak quickly.
All right.
Yes, just to update on the comprehensive plan. I sent out an email to, I think, hopefully all of you, except Mr. Mercer, who doesn't have email. But the invitation is to you as well. Basically, what we're trying to do with the comprehensive plan is I'm soliciting names of what we feel that people that would be quality attenders and contributors and have a vision for the city. And so I'm looking to compile that list. I'm trying to find 3 people from the Planning Commission, 3 from the Alderman. I don't want to go any higher than that, so we don't have to have open meeting laws issues or whatever, and then have about 10 or 11 people from the community, probably a small portion from the development community and some other stakeholders. I don't want a group that's too large because it might be hard to move it forward. It might just, but I don't want to make it too small either because I want a good representation of people. And what this would be is basically an advisory group. We've met with, the planning department's met with Mr. Barber, because there was a couple years ago, the discussion of using his firm, Orion Planning, as the main company to update the city's plan. And he explained to us kind of how he does plans, or how their firm does plans, because I wasn't familiar with that at all. And so right now what I'm just trying to come up with is names of individuals that would kind of meet that criteria. And I plan to take it to the alderman to formalize it, since I'm not a person with great tenure here or whatever, so I don't know a lot of people or whatever. So I'm basically asking for names, and then I would take it to them to formalize it. And it'd probably be about, I'm looking for an odd number just for voting requirements, 19 people, 21 people, something like that. And some people have already indicated they would either like to be on the advisory group, or I've got some names. Actually, the previous full director, Ethan Green, he actually had a list of some names. I plan on calling those folks, see if they're still interested, because that was like, a year or so ago. See if they're still available and interested in the process. But the idea behind it is they would probably meet a few times. We're looking at probably a whole year for the comprehensive plan update, maybe a smidge more. I don't know if it would meet once a month, but there'll be at times when the planning firm has done research and they have data, and they come up with certain things, and the steering committee or this advisory group, whatever its final name is going to need to provide direction to staff as far as which way to go. And I think there'll be some key spots. I'm thinking it's probably meet about every 2 months. It could be once quarterly. I don't know. We just have to see how much from the front end on the research and the public input of what we get for issues, and as far as how to direct the plan or the plan's formation. So that's what I'm doing. I'm soliciting names, and would be contacting people to see if they'd be interested, positive contributors to that process. So item 2, the small cell technology revisit. The city did pass an ordinance last year in November that deals with these small cell towers, if you will. They look like a lot like utility poles. And my fear was by that passage, and then now we're getting applications in. Matter of fact, you'll have a conditional use permit next month to consider one of those. Is that we were going to get inundated with 10 or 20 or 30, and they would all be handled through a conditional use permit. So, and we can't lump them all together. They have to be individually considered. So, but it appears from talking to at least the one applicant that filed three of these, 2 of them were actually in road right away. So that would not come before you because there's no zoning there. So there's nothing to apply from a zoning standpoint. So there's one that's actually on private property. It's got a certain amount of zone. It's got a certain classification of zoning. I think it's residential zoning. That will be the one that comes before you. But in speaking to the representative from the telecommunications company, it looks like most of the time the industry is going to try to place these in right of way. So hopefully you won't see 12 cases or 18 cases, whatever the number would be, come before you in conditional use permits. So that was my fear, and maybe the ability to go back and revisit that ordinance or make an amendment to the zoning ordinance. But for now, I'm just going to kind of leave it as is and see kind of how it plays out over the next 6 months to a year probably. And then the last thing here is that as Commissioner Little had brought up last month, the actual planning commission date, the normal day of the month falls on Memorial Day for May. And so staff is looking for direction if you want to go move ahead or drop back. Obviously keep in mind if you move it too far ahead, we may have notification issues if there's a public hearing involved, as far as, and then also just from a sheer time to process the cases or whatever. Right now, I'm basically working every Saturday, and I'm barely making it as far as what I'm bringing to you. And every Saturday now is accounted for through April. And so, I mean, if you moved it 2 weeks ahead, you probably would have a real short agenda for May, unless you're seeking that.
So my question is if we was to move it 1 week ahead, with us notifying the public now, would that not be enough notification to let them know that we're moving our meeting a week ahead? I mean, because we're looking at the end of March now, it's basically 60 days.
Yes, no, it's much better than what the planning commission had done back at the end of November and moved it up. Yeah, because it was moved up because of the holidays there or whatever, but that was the very next meeting. So in this case, we still have an April meeting, and so it's a better time to consider the issue if you want to move it up. So that's why I put it on the agenda specifically or whatever. So.
Can we move it to the Tuesday, the next day?
I can't do Tuesdays. I can't do Tuesdays.
There's 5 Mondays in May, so is the 23rd too early?
No, I don't think so, as long as we're considering it tonight, because then I can tell people, if they want to file an application, pretty much, I mean, a lot of our applications say file 30 days ahead, but I've been telling people 60 days ahead, just because there's so much, and the way I do cases, I like to send it out for input from a lot of different sources, and like time to do the research and do the staff reports and the PowerPoints or whatever, and those all take time. And I just put them sequentially, and try to do that. So I think, to answer your question, I think a week ahead would be fine, because we're working in March now. I would be kind of panicky if we were in April and decided to move it ahead a week or so, but.
So, is everybody good with the 23rd?
Yeah.
Well, then I'll make a motion that we move the May meeting to May 23rd due to the Memorial Day being the following week.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer,
Here.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Inger,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes, Commissioner Vidal.
All right. Is there anything else that anybody would like to say? I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Yeah, all in favor say aye. Anybody opposed say the same. We are adjourned.